Okay.
Okay, we are streaming.
Where are we going?
Yep.
All right, welcome everybody for another Friday Night Live. We're going to
Actually,
be
officially, it's 30 more seconds.
Oh, well, is it already filming? And
I think it is coming across, though.
Okay.
It's always 2 minutes delay.
Okay. So, welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a female figure tonight. I've done 2 males so far, and we've done a lot of other things, obviously, week to week. But tonight, I'll just wanted to kind of even it out a little bit and do a female drawing. The abstraction will be used a little less, and some of you are starting to familiarize yourself with what that concept is, especially after watching the quick sketch segment a couple weeks ago, because that's where you really learn most about the Riley abstraction. And we use kind of a blasphemized version of it. It's actually very, it might even be more pure than the actual, well, I wouldn't say than the original one. The original one, obviously, Frank Riley, but then we had Fred Fixler, who taught us a slightly different one, and then obviously at our school now, Watts Atelier, we use even a more complex gridding system that is based on the original one that I was introduced to. But if you are in the online school, you'll notice that the handouts for Phase 3 Quick Sketch, where I introduced the more advanced abstraction, is quite different from the original abstraction that we used in the first phase. So, but it's a wonderful system, and I'll see if I can do justice to it tonight and show you a little bit about it as we go along, and we'll see what happens. So let me go ahead and start it. Let's see here. But again, thanks for tuning in, and feel free to ask questions, and we'll get started here. So I just kind of start really relaxed. You kind of want to look at the model, look at the pose, assess the distribution of weight. We're using comparative measurement. We're not using site size or any other method. We'll use some mannequinizing and some other things, but again, the big difference between how we work is we use comparative measurement, meaning we're going to estimate our measurement based on guessing. We're going to guess with angles and plumb lines, and we're going to basically keep it real light and non-committal until we get it laid in. So first thing you do is establish where you want the pose to kind of occupy the space on the page. It's an 18 by 24 page, so we want to kind of occupy it as nicely as we can. So we're learning a little bit about composition in the industry. I don't care if you're in concepting or you're doing fine art or illustration, storyboard, whatever. The art directors are going to know how hard it is to do life drawing, because a lot of them have been in art school and to do it, and to perfect it and to get really masterful at it is not an easy thing, but it is really well worth doing. So I hope I can help to get you inspired to do more studying of these techniques. These Friday nights are just kind of a little primer to kind of get you guys all warmed up and excited about the process of learning how to draw really well. And you're going to carry that into any discipline, anything that you do. So I'm really a firm believer in it. So I start with the head, and I just kind of stumble it in, meaning it's a painting term, and that means to kind of move the tone around in kind of a brushy manner. And I lean back, so every time I make a decision, I lean back and I try to assess whether or not that decision contributed or detracted from the overall feeling of the pose. So get the head, neck, large block, and then go back, get the angle of the shoulders, and find the acromion process on both sides, as well as the manubrium, or the sternal notch. And here's your clavicle, which looks almost like an exaggerated handlebar on a bike. And we've got sometimes you'll see me do some mapping of some major shadows along with the actual navigation of the lines, because the first stage of this drawing process is going to be somewhat linear. The Riley method, the tonal method of drawing, it doesn't mean that you do not use line. It actually means that you use it more strategically than in some other techniques that are more driven by actual line accentuation. So what I'm doing now is I'm kind of finding my center line and I'm bowing it. You can do it very generically as an arc without the actual S-curve in it. But the way the stomach kind of sucks in a little bit as it comes off the sternal area, down the rib cage, down the epigastrial section, your abdominal wall, and then down to the lower ab, it kind of comes in a little bit and then bulges out again at the very bottom. So I sometimes will animate that center line a little bit to help give it a little bit of that characteristic anatomically. But again, these lines can be used in many creative ways, and they're really just used to help in the process of finding your general measurement. Now you guys are going to have a hard time seeing what I'm doing because I'm so light, but that's what I want to, it'll start to take form as I get a little bit further in. But the thing is you want to stay light because you just don't want, you have to remove these lines and move them all over the place, chances are, because they're not laser accurate. So we have to kind of inch our way into accuracy through trial and error. And that's why we don't want to commit to dark lines, because we can't remove those very easily. So remember, there's no undo button on this technique. So if you're a digital artist and you're starting to learn how to draw traditionally, cut yourself a lot of slack, take your time, don't be hard on yourself, because it is a different process. It's similar in a lot of ways, but it also has its own unique characteristics, and a lot of it being a little bit less forgiving as far as ruining the nap of the paper, especially in the smooth newsprint, which is not a very durable paper. It's not designed for durability, it's designed for cheap. So the fact that it's cheap is great, but it's not the highest quality. We use it because we go through so many drawings in the process of getting proficient that you don't want to be using a handmade Fabriano or something that's like $2 a sheet, because you're gonna go broke just trying to learn how to draw. So we use it, and it's because it takes the tone really in a very beautiful manner. I've yet to find an archival paper that I find as nice as the smooth newsprint, but it might just be because I've done probably 10,000 drawings or more on the stuff. So, and I don't say that to brag or anything. It's just I've done a drawing, and it just, you know, it's a beautiful surface. So I'm always trying to find an archival surface that kind of matches it, and I found a few that are close. But a lot of times when I go for archival drawings, I use you know, Bristols or you know, again, Fabrianos, but I usually use graphite. I usually do, you know, 40 hour charcoal drawings, although you can, by all means. And there's some beautiful ateliers out there that have, I mean, just some drawings from ateliers that are absolutely gorgeous. And some of them use obviously different methods. Some of them are spending really a lot longer on drawings than we do at our atelier, but there's a point at which I think it can get a little ridiculous. But most of the time, you do need to do those long efforts along with those shorter gestural efforts, building your skill sets. Anything coming through over there, Brian? Or?
Yeah, they want to know what kind of materials you're using.
Well, the materials are basically the standard materials that we use at our atelier, which usually are the Conte 1710B pencils. And Conte makes a number of pencils, so you want to make sure it's that 1710, because that's the one that's going to be able to sharpen to a long taper. I'm actually using an old Ritmo, which were common around the time I was going to school in the early 90s. And they were an Italian company that was a really wonderful little pencil. It was later bought out by Grumbacher, I believe, and they actually kind of destroyed the pencil in the process of either manipulating the way that it was made. Something happened, and it's no longer the same pencil that I remember. It's still out there, I believe, but I don't even bother buying them anymore because they just don't act the same way. You can use Generals. You know, one of our teachers uses Generals. I'm not a huge fan. They're a little bit gritty and rocky for me, so I don't normally use those. I may play around with them a second chance coming up, but I really haven't lately. The Wolf's Carbon is another pencil you can use, and that's a kind of like a graphite drafting pencil. I mean, it's charcoal, but it feels more like graphite to me almost. And those ones you need to get a 4B or a 6B. Use those ones because their Bs are like almost like an etching tool. They're so hard, so you don't really want to be using those. But the Primo pencil is nice as well. It's very soft, kind of inconsistent with its ability to be sharpened. It breaks a lot, and so I've kind of got away from those. Derwents are the same way. So there's a lot of pencils out there. You'll just have to try a bunch of them and see which ones work best for your method of drawing and how you want to express yourself in drafting. So head back to your right a little bit. That's good. That way we have a little sliver of light on there. Thank you so much. So yeah, the materials, and then smooth newsprint, 18 by 24, and that's kind of hard to get some places on the planet. So I understand if you're having a hard time getting it. You may want to just try to find a hybrid paper that's similar. I don't have a lot of easy answers for you in that department if you're from somewhere where they don't have easy access to the paper. Because I know on our online students we constantly get people saying how difficult it is to get some of these materials. Do the best you can. Online is a great resource now, and you can usually get almost anything anywhere. It may cost you a little bit, so you just have to be patient with that, or keep searching around and get on the forums if you're on the online and ask other people where they're finding them, because there's a lot of people that are probably from the same area you're from, and they can probably help you a lot with finding some of these materials as well. So anyway, just you don't have to absolutely use newsprint. It's not like the end all be all of anything. It's just what I prefer for this particular style of teaching.
Well, Bob Green wants to know more about tiling. He looked up the term and couldn't find much, and was wondering if you could talk more about it.
Yeah, it's more the realm of painting than it is drawing. We don't normally mention drawing because it's really not that pertinent. Although it is shape, it's basically shape recognition painting. So it's painting through shape and designing shape. So you're taking pieces of information that you see and distilling them down into very specific geometric interpretations. And so it's a way of thinking, it's a way of seeing. It's best learned in gouache painting. That's how we train at the school in it and online. We encourage that medium is probably the best suited for teaching you those concepts. So just think of it as shape recognition drawing or painting, where you're basically breaking things down into contained shapes. And in gouache, because the paint dries so instantaneously, it will leave a shape no matter what. I mean, you just, whether you want to or not, you're going to get a shape. So you either design that shape or it designs something for you. And it's better if you tell it what you want it to be rather than it telling you what it wants to be. So usually tiling, again, you're not going to find a lot. It's a very specific style of working, and it's one that was very popular in the Riley method. And it wasn't method. The difficult thing is we're probably the one carrying the torch, I think it's safe to say, now that the original school, the California Art Institute, recently went away, and that's unfortunate. But schools have their lifespan, and they don't always last forever. That's for sure. Especially in the integrity of their original owner or the original visionary that actually started them. So, you know, the Riley method now, there aren't a lot of schools. There aren't a lot of good books on it that I know of. Ferragasso did some books on it, and God bless him, but they're just a little bit wanting, you know, in my opinion, when it comes down to certain aspects of how complicated the system he documented was versus the results that he was able to present in the book. So a lot of people have a tendency to shy away from the technique because it is a little bit like vector calculus drawing, or at least it can look that way to a. So the goal that I've tried to set forth as over the 20-some years I've been learning this and teaching this, probably 25, 26 now, is basically to present it in a very user-friendly manner that anybody could understand. And that's the art of any good teaching, is can you distill down complicated concepts so that anybody could learn them? Not make them so complicated visually or verbally that you confuse your viewer, but maybe you sound really smart in the process of doing that. That's not good teaching, that's just not good at all. So the key thing is the Riley method was big on teaching people to paint through drawing because it's cheap and efficient. And then ultimately when they transitioned from charcoal over to oil, they did so by transitioning through gouache, which was a water-based medium that's very forgiving. And it's also, again, lends itself to tiling, which allows you to be a more disciplined oil painter and to paint more efficiently when you go to oil. So it was the bridge between the charcoal and the oil was gouache. And that's where I learned how to tile. And some of the greatest tile painters are people like Norman Rockwell. Presently, you know, Morgan Westling is one of the best. You know, he came from the school I went to. There's a lot of people out there that know this tiling method. There's just not a lot of good education on it because most of those people don't go to teach. They're too busy out working, painting for a living, and they're not going to stop and pass it on, most likely, in any structured manner. So our school is one of those schools where I've kind of made it more my calling to do that, and also to train other people. So in the future you will see up, but it's still somewhat relatively unknown, not taught that often in most colleges or art schools or things of that sort. So you're not going to find it at Art Center, you're probably not going to find it at RISD or at San Francisco Academy even, or definitely not on the college level or the junior college level. It would be almost impossible to find. So, anyway, I wish I could give you a better source to go to, but if you are really hankering to get into it, then get online and start learning, and you'll be able to pick that stuff up. And I think you'll be very thankful because it is a wonderful way to think, a wonderful way to navigate form. That was very wordy, so hopefully I didn't lose some of you guys on that one.
Yeah, you got it. Joe Burgle asked if you're paying a lot of attention to negative space at this point.
Oh yeah, always. Anytime you put a shape down, it creates both a negative and a positive shape, and it's impossible to ignore one or without the other. You know, it's like two sides of the same coin. So we really have to always acknowledge the fact that whenever we make a shape, it creates other shapes that are going to be either desirable or not desirable, and we need to make sure that we try to make them what we want, or at least distill it down. So again, think about this saying that I'd say this all the time online, is scan, identify, predict, decide, execute. It's called SIPD. And SIPDE. Scan, identify, predict, decide, and then execute, and then stop. And then do the next decision, go through that process, and the next one, and the next one. Now I do it so fast and I process information so fast from so many years of doing it, that process is a little bit more, or it looks as though it's a very continuous process of thought that's occurring. When you start learning that, you have to stop literally in between your major decisions and reflect on them. And it does slow down the drawing process a bit, but ultimately it projects you further forward if you're able to be ingrain a very disciplined approach to drawing. Speed is the illusion. It's an illusion. It's not by moving your hand fast that you do fast work. By processing information and putting down good decisions, one after another, you get the illusion of speed, because you're not correcting and fixing and all your mistakes that you're making that you will be happening if you're not really adept at the process. If you're like drawing and thinking and looking at the same time, you're going to be making all kinds of scratchy, chaotic strokes, and it's going to create not a very professional look. And a lot of collateral damage is going to occur that has to be fixed on the. That's going to take time. You're going to have to remove stuff that you probably could have avoided if you had put it in more carefully in the first place and slower. So there is such a thing as speed. You know, speed is essential in today's working environment, but you don't get fast, again, by moving fast. You get fast by moving slow and methodically over a long period of time. And that's how I try to instill that in students. Now, the head is okay right now. It's a little cantilevered off the neck. There's a lot of nice stuff happening. Up there, I'm looking up at the model. You can't see this, but I'm sitting down and the model stand is higher. So I have a perspective where I'm looking up into the jaw. And I'm still not fighting, but working to try to get that illusion. And it'll take some time. But again, drawing is not a perfect science. And I don't want to make it one. So I'm not looking for a fail-safe technique like, again, sight size or something to help me navigate form. I want to have it be a very dynamic process, and I'll keep it light and I'll move things. So if you're a perfection-oriented person that wants to be a perfectionist and everything wants to be perfect, drawing is going to be a very frustrating process for you, because there's no system that I know of that'll do that for you. It's always a matter of, oh, it's a little too much this, it's a little too much that, oh, let's move that now, oh, that needs to be moved a little bit. And there's no way to know that ahead of time. You don't have laser accurate placement. Nobody does. So it's all a matter of being smart, intelligent, and really trying to navigate your form in a very relaxed, light, controlled manner. And in doing so, you're going to yield good results consistently over time, and you're also going to get more intuitive with that process over time, which will give you the illusion of the speed that we're talking about. So again, I usually start head, neck, shoulders, crotch, ground, back up to the head, go back down, back up to the head, and every time I go down through that process, I add a layer of information back onto the pose. Right now, again, I'm going back to that head, and I'm going to spend some time up under control. Because again, I have some issues that aren't terrible, but they're just not to my liking. So I'm going to make sure that I give it some TLC here. See if I can get it locked down a little bit better. Nose angle, width of the nose, parallel to the angle of the nose, should give us the tear duct of the eye that's on the left. Okay, if you go straight up, which most people do, you're going to pinch your eyes too close and it's going to make the head look too long. So you want to be very careful. Okay, so right now I'm looking at the eye as it sits in the socket, and I'm scrutinizing the arc of the eyebrow versus how the eye is sitting in there, how far out the eyebrow goes before it hits the zygomatic bone, which heads out towards the ear. The temperature of the skull is going to come in and hit on the outside of where that eyebrow peaks, usually. She's got pretty thick eyebrows, which is great. Nice to get, good form out of, and I can really design the shape nicely. If you feel like you want to, go ahead and put the eyeball in and just wrap the lid around it. You know, just go in and wrap your lid. And then insert the actual elliptical feel of the iris, the colored part of the eye. And then as I'm doing that, I'm constantly looking at my relationship of the eyes, the distance between them, the width of the nose, did I get too wide on it? These are all guesses. So I'm a little bit skeptical. As good as I am at doing it, and as long as I've done it, I still am skeptical. And not in a bad way, just always want to be respectful that the minute I daydream and don't think about what I'm doing, I will put down a bad stroke. No different than you or anybody else. You're never so good that you're safe from putting bad strokes down. So you just don't want to get complacent with that and think that, oh yeah, I've drawn thousands of drawings, so I should be able to do it in my sleep. No, I don't think that ever happens. You get faster, you get more intuitive, but again, this head, I'm going to wrestle with it, and it might be a wrestling match for a little while before I get it to fall into place, but it will. That's the one thing is I always have confidence that sooner or later I will get it nailed down. Sometimes I just have to work at it. I just have to get it. Just keep pecking away at it.
Justin H. asked what your biggest obstacle in your career was.
Oh God, there's been a lot. I think everybody would probably feel that way. But the biggest obstacle has probably been just being honest with myself and authentic. Thank you. Do we need to tape everything off? Can you go ahead and tape? Yeah, go ahead and hold that for a second. I'll answer that question at break here. I would say the biggest obstacle I've run into is just authenticity. Like being authentic with myself, following my gut instincts as far as what I should be doing instead of what other people think I should be doing. So a lot of times, everyone has their own struggles. Some people have a with the way they want to work that just is natural for them. For me, I'm such a good emulator, meaning that I learn through emulation, copying, that I can almost copy anyone's style very quickly, good and bad. It's great if you are in a job and they say, hey, can you do something that looks like so-and-so, Drew Struzan, or can you do a faux version of a Richard Schmidt, or can you make it look like, I can do that. But when it comes to saying, oh, can you just do it the way you would do it, like in your style, 100%, I've put on so many different caps and studied so many different people that it's hard for me to totally be completely concrete with my identity as a painter. And so I've struggled with that, like most people do, having a very specific style that anybody would recognize, like Fechin, Nikolai Fechin, or any of them, Soroya, Sargent, any of the greats, Frazetta. These are people that you would never mistake for somebody else. You would just know it within 2 seconds of seeing it. And so that's one thing I've struggled with. But other than that, I think everybody struggles with that. I don't know too many people that don't. Probably been the biggest struggle for me is just my personal identity and my authenticity with my work. Painting things that mean something to me regardless of somebody else. And as a fine artist, that's what you really hang your hat on, is individuality, professionalism, consistency. And they want that because it's easier to market a consistent look than it is if you're painting like 13 different people. So anyway, let's take a little break. I'll be back in a minute, continue firing the questions off, and I'll continue ratcheting down in this drawing. But we've got a nice little lay-in in, so we're starting off on a good foot. Some issues in the head that are bugging me, but I'll just take deep breaths and relax and fix it up on the next session.
You can also ask if it sounds better, so we can turn off that.
I think it was.
Okay.
They mentioned that they reconfigured it was better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was that one caused a lot?
Well, I could hear it when I was listening.
Yeah.
I could turn that one down.
That's okay. I mean, it's not too bad, is it? At all. I'm trying to start painting again.
It's usually bigger.
Let's say,
Did you do any other break?
well, no, maybe that one.
Yeah. But I mean, not like a daily.
No.
Once I actually get that down on the canvas, like once I'll start tiling.
Yeah.
I figured
I usually
today
start
would
painting
be fun because
once I get that down.
Well, that's got me. Yeah.
Once I get those suckers down there,
Yeah, that'd be kind
then I'll
of
start
fun.
going and kind of
Oh, yeah.
fixing
In the
it.
future, when we have these long breaks, I'll probably
Once the paint's
look
down,
models
start
throughout
grabbing these
and
guys.
just invite some of them to come in.
Yeah.
Especially the teachers, because everyone knows it's so cool. But a break that size,
Usually,
I mean, it's just way too.
Usually no. Sometimes once I start like building the tiles, I'll start getting more paint on there, Usually when I start laying in tiles,
I knew, yeah, you got
kind of
lots
get
of
like a nice, like middle value going somewhere, like 5 or so, maybe somewhere like 4 to 6 range, I'll have the middle values going. And then I'll start kind of like pushing and pulling, so if I do load up anything, it'll be pushing darks or pulling out the highlights too. So other than that, it's just playing with edge, just pushing around what's already up there. I might go ahead. Exactly. Like over here, pick up jobs, right?
Yeah, that's just water, it's a different shape.
What's that?
But that's the flat.
Yeah.
It's over. You have over there. So like if yes, right?
Yeah.
So like all this middle stuff, like these reds, that kind of that purplish color going in here, it's purplish here. But usually get that stuff down there. Pushing the red with softer brushes.
Do you have that lesson
down? And then we get really chunky highlights
Surgeons use it a lot.
up here. Then we'll start loading up those softer brushes as well. They start loading around there. The bristle brushes when you go and lay that down. The bristle will scrape away to the previous layer. It's tough to kind of load up the bristle brush.
A lot of surgeons use it. And it's a
Did you never thought what kind of thing would say was cool? I thought it makes yourself look
Yeah, no, sailors work, dude. Sailors still in before.
because it's like a very fluffy shirt, so then the bristle is got the scratchy throat. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, here would be, that would probably be, yep. Some type of scrape over in there. Like it'll either, you have to load them up pretty heavy to get them to lay down without scraping through the previous layer. So if you are going to use them to lay down like a lighter tone, like make sure it's like a highlight that you use these bristles with, because that's like the only thing that
And
can
I think a lot of surgeons use it.
So definitely gonna up my usage of staples.
Yeah, it's a way better.
I'd say
Solution.
20% bristle and 20% staple, but.
Yeah, because this thing, it's like what Morgan uses. It's like he's about to,
So usually like,
like a falcon
especially
ear,
for
you know, and the falcon's gonna fly in and land on his.
commercial work.
Instagram account?
I don't think, we might, I don't know. Why, what's the? Oh, no, I don't, I forgot everything else. Tumblr? Yeah, we've got Tumblr and we've got stuff like that, but we do not have an Instagram.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so we're gonna get back into it here. Let me get the timer going. Again, I'll just talk about all kinds of stuff that's on things that are on my mind. Yeah, it's interesting talking and drawing. It took a long time to learn how to do that. I wasn't always great at it, but I picked it up. I think it's a right-left brain thing, and some people do it better than others and more natural than others. Let's see here. Go back that way a little bit more. There you go. And then head back. Yeah, not too much. A little too much. There you go. A bit farther to the left. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. I know I'm so ridiculous. So yeah, as far as all this stuff goes, you just want to really stay very patient with yourself. It took me so long to get really intuitive with drawing and painting. And again, when I say intuitive, it means the ability to paint and to perceive other things or think of other things while you're actually painting, rather than just focusing on the particulars of painting. And that's the natural thing, is that you have to, when you're learning to paint, a lot of people are so enamored with color and they really want to get in there and start learning all that stuff, and they're still struggling with edges and shapes and value and placement, and there's no way that color could ever enter into the equation when all that's happening. Thanks. So what you want to try to do is limit the things that you're worrying about, and monochromatic drawing like this allows you to focus on edge manipulation, shape design, all these things that allow you to basically learn how the same concepts as painting, but without all the money and expenses and difficulties that you're going to run into no matter what you were using. I don't care if you were using any number of different mediums. And again, that's why I know why a lot of people go to digital, and I understand why they're so enamored with it and why it's such a great medium, because it gives you the ability to kind of learn how to paint in different mediums without having to buy all the materials that are required for all those mediums, which cost time, and you have to have a place to store everything. And as a young kid or just starting out, you don't normally have access to a nice studio, and that's kind of a rite of passage that everybody has to go through. as a painter is to build your library, number one, and your studio. And those are two things that could take you decades to come to fruition. So I know that sounds really, I always am talking about things in such broad amounts of time because I'm just being honest that it takes a long time to get all this stuff to come together for yourself. So I think the more realistic you are with it, and not idealistic, the less disappointment and the more reality-based you will be approaching the concept of training properly. And again, I'll try not to paint a really ridiculously daunting picture of it, but I can only go so far without saying, I know how fast I learn, I know who trained me, and I know how I was trained, and I'm still training, so I don't want to make it sound like I don't mean to train anymore. I'll be training the rest of my life. But I know how long it took me, and I know how long I've watched other people take, and I've met some of the fastest learners, I've met some of the slowest, I've met, you name it, some of the most gifted people, and it takes some time, no matter who you are. And so I just want you to have a sense of reality with what you're kind of attempting to try to accomplish. And then if you theoretically, you should love the process of training. It should not be like pulling teeth. Maybe in the beginning when you're not very good and everything's hard, like any sport or athletic endeavor, it's not that fun to do something you're not very good at. It just isn't. But something in you keeps you going, and something is tempting enough to outweigh the frustration and keep you studying and moving forward until you get past those awkward phases, which everybody goes through. And that's what we want to try to do when we're training somebody, is to stay in there until you get to where it is actually fun. But I love to train. I don't understand the concept of people complaining about having to do a life drawing or having to go into life drawing class or having to do another skull drawing or having to, I love doing that stuff. I wish I could just sit around all day doing that stuff, you know. I'm going to keep trying to encourage you to fall in love with the craft of drawing and painting so that you can just have a lifetime of enjoyment in the process. And then it's just a matter of time before you get phenomenally good. So, Brian, any other questions over there hanging out?
Yeah, Joe T has heard you mention bad habits that can be tough to unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
Could you mention a few or the more common ones?
Yeah, you know, when you're self-training or, you know, trying to put your eye in place without a good eye or a great eye that's around you that can look over and guide you in that process, the eye just has this inability to be able to see non-biasedly its own mistakes, even though it thinks it does. So that's the big dilemma, is that people think their eye's good, but when a really educated eye is able to actually watch them work, or they're in an environment around those kind of eyes, it becomes very apparent that some habits have been instilled that need to be broken. Now, I picked up one when I was young, where I always make the distance between where the nose and the top of the lip is, which we call the philtrum. That's that funny shape between the lips. I always make mine long, and no one ever caught that. And so to this day, I still struggle with making long philtrums, and it's very frustrating at my level to have to deal with that. But I'm aware of it. But I always have to like ask my wife, hey, does this look too long? Or I don't totally trust that my eye is seeing it correctly. Now that's just a good example of a very specific, small, odd habit that was picked up. Some people make the heads always too small, always too big. Sometimes they always make the femurs too long, or the upper arm too long, for whatever reason. It could just be something that no one ever caught it because they were drawn by themselves, and they were drawn out of books that maybe weren't that great, and they thought they were good, but they really didn't know what they were really going for, so they picked up some book that had somebody that had drawing errors in their drawings, and then they picked up those same habits, because basically when you study from somebody, you pick up their habits. And that's why you want to be very careful with who you study with or what books you study from. You don't the first book on how to draw at Barnes & Noble and start drawing from it. It could be horrifically bad. You know, so again, avoid major issues with placement, spatial relationships, things of that sort. And so, yeah, some of the big ones are head size issues, where people have a tendency to either draw if you're 6'8" as a guy, all your figures are going to be like 6'8", because you're used to seeing yourself, you're familiar with your own body, you're familiar with your own type, so you're going to inject your type into your drawings. Now, if you do that for 100 drawings or 1,000 drawings, you're always going to draw tall people. And if you draw have to draw a shorter person, you're going to automatically inject those proportions into it because they're ingrained. And that's not good. So a good teacher will watch that and will nip that over time. Or you just have to make sure you're drawing from good sources. So a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but I'm working online and I don't have you there every second to correct my drawing. How am I going to prevent those kind of errors from occurring? Well, it's going to be a lot better because what we're doing is we're giving you we're showing you, first of all, by doing it in front of you. Then we're providing you with the exact same reference from which you're going to draw. And then you're going to go through and do the same thing. And then I'm providing another reference that you can also draw from. A lot of times showing you examples of those. And so you're kind of getting the right reference already. So as long as you study from that and don't deviate that much from it, you shouldn't get yourself into too much trouble. It's when people start picking their own reference and they don't know how to, and they pick bad reference, and now there's someone like, I love Hogarth, but he has major issues with some of his curves. So you might pick up that book and say, oh, here's a good anatomy book. It's this Bern Hogarth guy. And again, I have multiple copies of them. Very strategically, and I only study certain things from them. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't resonate with me. Now, it may resonate with you, and if it does, then you can just discredit and just, you have to take responsibility for your own influences. You might say, well, I love that guy, and I don't care what Jeff says. I'm going to study from him. And you have the right to do that, and I would say that's great. But just know that you're going to pick up his habits, and that's going to be kind of how you're going to be drawing. For me, I prefer someone that balances their straights and curves a little more strategically. Someone like Andrew Loomis, or someone of that, that kind of lineage, or that caliber of draftsman. And again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Bern Hogarth. He's phenomenal, and you cannot argue with that guy's ability and what he understands about anatomy. But the way he wields it, especially in head drawing, for example, I don't want my heads to look like that, so therefore I'm not going to study heads from him. I might study parts of heads from him, like how to draw a nose, or how to draw an ear, or how to navigate topographic form, but I'm not going to draw from his heads. I'm not going to copy him, because I don't want my heads looking like that. So the litmus test is, do you want your drawings to look like that person's drawings? If so, good to copy from them. If not, might want to observe them, but maybe not do, hours and hours of copying of their work. So again, you can see right now the drawing is in a very linear phase. Mapping is the ability to lay down the diffusion that occurs between the light and the dark. Is it a hard edge? Is it a firm edge? Is it a soft edge? Is it a lost edge? We only have 4 edges to make something look three-dimensional on a flat surface. Everything is a combination of those edges. How we utilize those edges will ultimately determine how effective our visual statement is. Whether it's phenomenal, it's good, or whether it's kind of not so good, will all depend on how we manipulate our edges and values. And then on top of that, we have color. And color will come last. And color will be the most flexible of those 3 concepts. Contrary to most people's beliefs. Color takes a lot of the abuse, or it takes a lot of the, it's an scapegoat for a lot of people. They blame color. Oh, my color didn't work. Oh, I don't, like the color. When you scrutinize their paintings, it's usually their edges and values that are suffering. And no amount of color, or no kind of color combinations would save that particular problem. So we definitely want to put a lot of weight on drawing as a way of understanding edge and value, so that when we go to painting, we don't struggle with it so much, and we can spend more of our time exploring our color harmonies and our ability to understand color, and to what degree what degree of intuitiveness that we have. Because one of the best gifts you can have, or not genetically, but more maybe genetically, it's hard to say, is the gift of being able to harmonize color intuitively. It is really helpful. But if you don't, there are ways to learn it, and we will be laying down phases in that. And I'll take a crack at teaching a color theory phase, but it'll be definitely unlike most things you've ever seen, because I'm a very intuitive colorist, so I don't normally study color through theory, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But a little bit of theory can go a long way, and sometimes you may be in a situation where you really do need to learn it that way, because you're not working with an intuitive feel of it, and that's okay. We'll get you through that down the road. But the main thing right now is just worry about your edges and values, so that you can see when you get to color, you don't have that as something that you have to also wonder, is it my values that are causing the problem? Is it my edges that are causing the problem? Or is it the causing the problem? sometimes it's hard to know if you're struggling with these basic concepts. So, okay, Brian?
Joseph Q mentioned that he's heard a lot of good artists say to never copy the model during life drawing. So can you talk about how you design the shapes and how you decide what information to use and what not to use?
Boy, that's a toughie, man. I mean, it's not that you don't copy the model, you interpret the model. And like I always say, you know, for me, good drawing is a part of what I see, it's part what I know, and it's part what I wish I saw. The last part of that equation is where your identity and where the subtlety of your knowledge comes together. In order to be able to draw what you wish you saw, you have to know an awful lot. And not just know it intellectually, know it intuitively. And that is where a lot of people break down. Never really trained anatomy intuitively. They think they've studied anatomy. They can recite all the bones and muscles, insertions, origins, functions, but they don't really know what it is to do with that information. So yes, they could play Trivial Pursuit really well and, you know, answer all these really advanced questions about anatomy, but when it comes down to drawing a nice kneecap or what makes a beautiful elbow or whatever, how do you do that? Well, usually, again, by looking at other artists that are phenomenal and off of their ability to do it until you have the ability to do it. So when you talk about designing what you see versus copying what you see, a lot of systems break down that I know of. A lot of systems don't account for that kind of process. They're more based on rigid documentation of the object in front of you. And as a result, you know, that's not necessarily in and of itself a bad thing. But when you go to be a conceptor or an inventor, or you want to all of a sudden create fictitious characters and beautiful illustrations that are a little bit more on the whimsical side or the invented side, that's where that system, those other systems will really break down pretty quickly. Whereas when you're learning, if you can learn anatomy and learn how to draw more what you like to see combined with what you know, you're going to open up those floodgates to be a better inventor and a better manipulator. And so the best draftsmen I know that I admire are ones that are not literal, but they're very interpretive. But yet when you look at their drawings, they possess an amazing amount of accuracy. So it's not about just throwing around strokes and hoping something cool lands on the paper. That's not what I'm talking about. It's quite actually the opposite. It's having such an incredible resource of gained knowledge from copying. How does one memorize artistic knowledge? Through emulation and copying. That's the only way. You don't read a book on anatomy. You find one that has tons of beautiful drawings in it, and you copy those drawings, and then you cross-reference an anatomical book like Elliot Goldfinger's book, and you splice the two together, and you learn how to interpret anatomy based on part what you see, part what you know, cross-referencing the anatomical academics of it, and then reflecting on it, and then creating a Frazetta. Hardly 100% accurate as far as his anatomy. Look at Warrior with Ball and Chain as he comes down that hillside, and he's got his arms out, and he's got his chest thrust out, and he's got 32 abs. You know, I mean, he's got like a 12-pack, and it looks awesome. And it's not even possible to have that many abs. But he knows something that's spectacular, not something that's accurate and uninspirational. He's not going to sell book covers that way. He's not going to, he's not going to turn any heads by being 100% accurate, but then having everybody yawn when they look at it. So the key is understanding your anatomy so well that you can cheat it and still make it look as good or better than what it was you were drawing. That is an art that is way beyond just general drafting. And those are the artists that really appeal to me. Those are the ones that I raise an eyebrow to when I see them, are artists that possess that capability, because I know how much harder it is than just copying. Copying is copying. It's hard, but it doesn't mean that you're a great draftsman. It means that you can, given enough time, you can depict something. That means you have the ability to learn how to really draw, probably. But whether or not you ever learn how to really draw, depending on the methods that you employ, you may never get past that. And you may be stuck copying reference, and if the reference moves or it's not good, you may be stuck copying a piece of reference. And then the result is going to be lackluster, or it's not going to be as good as it could have been had you embellished or invented or manipulated that reference to make it look better. So, because the viewer's never going to know what you're drawing. I mean, the model is doing a phenomenal job tonight. She's going to be sitting up here. I'm going to be doing this drawing, and then she'll leave, and the drawing's going to be left, and all they're going to see is the drawing. they're not going to be able to cross-reference, see exactly what was different that I drew. It better look good. That's all I can say. It needs to read without the model being there and without me being there to justify the drawing. So therefore, it's a visual language. The language needs to speak for itself. And that's your job. Your job is to always make the drawing look great, no matter what you have to do. I don't care if you have to cheat, borrow, steal, pillage, plunder, whatever it takes to get a phenomenal job to be done. Because that's what your art directors are going to be looking for. They have no sense of humor when they're paying you lots of money. So if you come in and say, oh, here's my job, and you give it to them and your figure is lackluster and isn't inspirational, they're going to say, do it over. And you're going to say, well, I did it the way it looked. Doesn't matter. We don't like it. Do it over. And now you got to go and try to figure out how you're going to make it something that they want, which means you probably have to manipulate it or idealize it or exaggerate it. And that's where that ability comes in. And life drawing is one place that you can start to explore that. So is quick sketch. But that's what life drawing is one of the greatest anchor points for your training ever. It'll develop certain aspects in you that you would never develop through photo work. But photo work is not evil. And if you have to work from photos, don't worry about it. Do that for years and years and years and learn probably 3/4 of what you needed and then put the finishing touches on it from life class later on. So, I mean, I've done both. I work extensively from photos and I work extensively from live models. That's pretty ideal. But not everybody's going to have that luxury. Some people are going to be stuck somewhere where you can't get a lot of models and you're going to have to work more from photos and you'll do just fine. You know, the percentage that you would be lacking is only going to be noticeable to the 1% that's so advanced that they would be able to recognize what it is that you're not getting. And that's going to be a small percentage. But it doesn't mean for your own satisfaction and your own ultimate development that you don't want to go and pursue that. I know I didn't even give you guys a chance to even ask a question because I'm so wordy, but I'll stop and let someone else ask another question.
Will the online program have a hands and feet phase? And who's a good source for master studies of hands and feet?
We most likely, yes, we will for sure. When we finish the online curriculum in the next probably 5 years or so, and I wouldn't say it's ever going to be totally finished, but when it's receiving it, which is based on our curriculum that we've created over the last 25 years, which is some 80 to 90 classes in different areas. Yes, there will be foreshortening, there will be invented anatomy, there'll be advanced anatomy, there'll be 7 different phases of anatomy. There'll be sculptural anatomy, crochet classes, there'll be, I'm revamping Bridgman right now and redoing that whole book. Did the timer? Oh, yeah, no worries.
I just need a...
Okay, yeah, no problem. So we're going to go ahead and take a little break. I'm going to continue chatting. So go ahead and look at that where we're at there. We've got a really nice lay-in happening. So we were on, anatomy. Right now Eric's just laid down an anatomy phase that will be coming out in the next couple months. I'm working on one that takes a long time because I have to literally do a book for it in order for it to accompany the phase and then have that book printed. So that's going to take a little longer. But just be patient and you're going to see over the next couple years almost every area that you'd probably have interest in starting to appear. Perspective, tech drawing, character design, creature design, visual development classes, invented landscape, all the areas of a lot of areas of visual development and concepting and illustration, as well as every area of fine art, still life, portrait, figure, you name it. So we've got so much stuff planned. It just takes a lot of time to lay it down, and you want to lay it down as good as you possibly can. So be patient, but right now we already have somewhere around, I think, 500, 600 hours of content. By next summer, we'll have up to 800. And we're going to probably be releasing about 250 hours of content a year. So if you can think about that, it's ridiculous. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a break. Just keep watching, and we'll be back in a moment. And keep finding those questions. I'll try not to be so wordy, but it's almost impossible for me. So hopefully it's entertaining banter.
I think people like it.
That's good. Yeah. Just wordy. Come on, Jeff. So wordy. The Falconeer, that's going to be your nickname.
Falconeer?
Falconeer.
Oh my god.
You okay?
Yeah.
Is that your foot? It looked painful. I looked up there earlier and I thought, oh man, that's gonna hurt.
I just, where
Oh,
I'm
no.
it's kind of...
That was a nice piece. Oh, yeah. It's pretty cool to get one of that.
Finished it with the whole thing.
It's pretty cool, that little ashtray thing.
Yeah, that thing, I've
It's a good little foot
Actually
support.
finished it,
Yeah,
the only person I know that actually finished it.
Because otherwise
Oh, no, that's what it takes. You did fantastic. I can't wait to see what you do this time. Doing good.
They get all that over, so.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This is on page and
Good. You're taking what, 8 classes, 6 classes? 7?
taking 9, which is awkward, it's gonna take 10, I'll get 2 more, but, Ben's class, I really wanted, electronic.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I know.
didn't get to move to Boston, because I moved to Zoom, so it would be really useful positive.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I forgot to say.
I know, it's one of those ones where we have we have 2 German guys coming in, we're taking a lot, just like you, we have like 4 people doing the platinum pass, which is actually probably, it's good that you're, well, we're not doing it, but we're gonna probably not do away with it, but we're modifying it significantly after this term, because it's
And then, like,
gonna be a lot more expensive, it's gonna be a lot more restricted, because there's just too many, it takes up too many slots. If we have too many people in it, people take everything and then they drop out of some things and we're still paying the teachers for it. I mean, it doesn't work logistically, but,
I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah.
Because it's like an all day, every day.
yeah, it's smart. That's why I told people, I said, well, do it while you, while you can, because now we're in a different problem where the class is getting, in a couple of years, we'll probably have a waiting list or something. We probably won't, it'll be more, have to have some kind of lottery or waiting list type scenario, because we're not gonna get any bigger as a school.
A ton of international students.
Yeah, and I have no interest in going to school any bigger, so it'll just become more, harder to get into classes or something, or you have to do some kind of lottery for people to get into certain classes.
Or a system where if they're already, like, did you know them and you were like, they're really Russian and pretty, then they get to go. I like that system.
You like that system? That's the system you're gonna
That's what I
vote
propose it.
for? That's what you propose.
Very confident there.
Yes, you can always count on the Russian to be that way, yes. That's classic.
Klaus is coming out, yeah?
What's that?
Klaus is gonna be.
Oh,
out.
yeah, Klaus is awesome. He is so nice.
Is he?
Oh, he was such a nice guy. Yeah, we hung out with him quite a bit at Lexicon.
Yeah.
And he was just, yeah, he was just a great guy.
Did you meet Sid too?
I did not, Sid.
Sid?
Oh, yeah, Sid's
Yeah.
great too, yeah. It was nice. It was just a great group of people, man. And some of the best, such good work.
A lot of good
There's
stuff.
some good stuff coming up. It was impressive, very impressive. And it was amazing because there's a lot of kids out there now that are just going to get portfolio reviews and to try to get into that industry. So it's they can keep it that intimate.
Did you do a lot of
I did a ton of
Yeah.
them, and I did an hour and a half a piece. I did 20 minutes, and every one of them went an hour and a half.
It's awesome.
I was there. They actually got so mad because
like
those guys work. I didn't know that the
It's
guards
more
there,
reaction on
they
front of
want
my
it
skin
off,
feeling
man.
when it
When
gets
the
Yeah.
time's up, they
Yeah.
want to wrap that thing up. The guy comes in and I go, well, just give me a couple more minutes. And you would have thought, I thought he was going to shoot me. I thought he was going to shoot me. It's like, he just looked at me so mean. He's like,
So,
1 minute.
You just started.
And I'm like, what is the problem? So, then we took it across the street and did it in another
No,
hour
I was
and a half in
thinking
the
about
park.
that too, man.
It was fun though. I just can't do it. How do you do a
the
review
other
in
nice
20
thing,
minutes?
I mean,
I
the thing I
can't
hate
do
about
it.
it is just
So
the nice
yeah,
thing is I can
it was
put
fun
the
though. It was really, really, really fun to do.
cloth.
How you doing?
yeah.
Just like, yeah, we just got some minutes. Thanks for, you doing great.
Yeah.
Great.
But
Yeah, I was
because
gonna
everyone's
go.
how I work.
You can always, if you need to shake something out or something, feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah, just shake a hand out or something, because I know when you have a wrist like that or something, it's gonna, just, and then go back, it's fine. How's everything been going for you down here? Are you happy to be back down here?
Yeah, actually, because I was living in LA and it was
I think I
nice.
cut out the job.
It's LA. I was there for 5 years.
I don't know how people do it.
You work much
I
over
can't. I mean, I had highs, I was so, I was such a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
And I was working in Glendora at school and I feel like all this smog just gets caught against the foothills.
If you're down in that, I was in the San Fernando Valley the whole time I was there, and it's just like, it's just like the
Save all that? Is that like?
Oh, yeah.
Same thing, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's hot and oppressive, like right now,
Yeah.
I can only imagine
It's
how hot
gonna
it
be-
is.
Actually, I had a friend.
Mix it all together, like,
Yeah.
Oh,
So I
true.
threw some of that in there.
Oh man, I'm so happy I got out of alcohol. I'm like, thank you.
Of course, then I can wind
I
up
know,
mixing it up more if I want. So I keep it together.
That's it, growing up when I grew up there, it was a lot different, and now it's just gotten
Or I
more
get too much.
bad. I mean, because
So you put the clove oil,
I don't know why,
actually,
there's a lot of crime, it's just,
Put it
it's
right
not,
next to it.
what it- I mean, when I was there,
Draw.
20 years ago, it wasn't like that at all, and now I just, my parents still live out in the outskirts of
I was
it.
doing that.
My wife grew up in Mount Helix, so we grew up about 5 minutes from each other.
And yeah, so I started putting it next
Yeah,
to
so, you know, that's where my sister's still out in that area, my brother's in Cardiff.
most of them kept them dried out.
We're in
There's like
North
two colors
Vegas,
are still around.
my parents are still out there, so it's still home.
Yeah, or like
And it's nice, it's about a 45-minute drive, it's not too bad.
type stuff. And then cadmium worried for some reason.
Oh, did you?
Even if I mix it.
Oh, you were native?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You don't need
Try to
that.
look at that.
Oh, really?
No, you don't, everyone's a
I don't know, maybe
transplant.
it's
I mean, I was born and raised here, and Krista, your parents are Canadian, but she was here since she was
For me,
3.
it's these.
She might as well be pretty much, you know, native. But yeah, that's not a bad, I mean, it's a nice area now. I mean,
See,
I
he
mean,
seems
when
to
I
change my
was a
brand too.
teenager and I was
So,
looking for
some have more oil ones than others.
yeah.
kind of a sketchy area, but now.
Now it's got nice. Yeah, they're putting up all kinds of lofts and,
everything.
yeah, I like it now. Yeah, they have a lot of, they have a lot, my wife was vegan for a long time, so there was a lot of meat.
The longest time I had one of those Helix.
Is that, yeah, I think we went there a couple times, yeah.
Who's getting?
Yeah, yeah, it's a little funky. But we should take me to all these these different places. I never was, I mean, I did vegetarian first. I want to get back to doing that actually. But, and she's more vegetarian now because she had, you know, it's hard to not have deficiencies. A woman, like you get iron problems, you get, there's a lot of issues that you can get. Yeah, she's just anti-animal cruelty too, factory farms and all that stuff. So she was more ethically movement to that reason, which is really
Seems
cool.
like such a nice
And
opportunity.
I totally understood. I was like, man, I agree. I just
Pay attention to
have a hard time doing it. But I mean, I still don't like eating meat. It doesn't. But I think
get one, but I would
Notice that you're going on like fast forward.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, she goes back to eating cheese a little bit now. She's like, I can't do it. Okay, you guys, we'll go ahead.
Yeah, some live over here.
Yeah.
Magic, Falconeer. Come on.
Put it on my head then.
Falconeer. Oh. What was your nickname in
Your
school at some
nickname- your
point?
Nicknames never stick with me though. It's Tracy of Joe.
I'll ask Tracy if she likes that one. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. She won't go for it, I can tell you already.
Okay.
She said no,
Okay, so we're back,
but
everybody.
I'm listening, so.
Now let me set the timer, so because I always forget to.
Yeah.
I've been good.
She'll probably comment and say, Jeff, no falcon here.
I know she's got like a. Okay, so we're back. You guys probably heard us bantering. We actually don't have a. We're on break right now from our semester. We're getting ready to start back up here, so we are. We're just kind of, you know, we have a few guys milling around from that are, you know, local guys from the school and stuff, but we don't have the normal chitter chatter that's going on because we usually have the Friday night workshop going on next door, which I know a lot of you have had to deal with, and it's a little loud at times. I'm deliberately going a lot slower than I normally would so that I can really show the process. Now I'm down here at the foot. I'll try to lift it a little bit to see if we can get this so you can see what I'm doing, but it's really awkward because I can't barely see the model, but that's okay. A lot of people struggle with the feet because they're sitting, like the way our school is structured, we have a back row, and you have to look over the front row, and a lot of times you can't see the feet at all. So what you have to do is kind of stand up, look at the foot, come down, and then invent it, which is also good practice for you. I always try to encourage people to not be too deterred from that or mad, but just use it to your advantage to learn how to invent a foot a little bit better than normal. And because you're going to have to do it. And again, even if you were able to see the foot, you're going to look up, look down, and whenever you look down, you're basically inventing because you're not looking at the model at that time. So whatever recall that you were able to memorize during that short period of glancing at the model has to then be able to be put down. So almost all drawing is somewhat invented if we want to really look at it that way. So I don't normally, I try to really encourage people to try to develop and cultivate that ability to invent. It is incredibly helpful, even as a fine artist, which I spend most of my time doing now. But again, most of my friends and a lot of my background comes from, again, illustration, fantastic fantasy illustration type stuff. I still have a huge affinity and love for that genre, and I do believe some of the best painters and draftsmen reside in that area, even though they don't always get their fair credit for how good they are. But that's starting to change. We have a lot of, like Art Renewal Center, which we're a part of, and I'm a huge fan of. They're a really great organization. They're really spearheading a lot of the imaginative realism. And I just got back from the LuxCon, which was really cool. And it was a phenomenal show with amazing painters, amazingly creative people. And just really fun to hang out with those guys. What a great group of people. And again, so, you know, for me, I have a very eclectic appreciation for animators, fine artists, you name it. If it's good work, my hat's coming off. I mean, I don't have an ego when it comes to these different genres and which ones are better than other ones and which ones are more or whatever. You know, it's just fine illustration, it's fine art, it's all good. The key is to not let yourself get, you know, so, I don't know, arrogant or goofy about that stuff. I mean, just appreciate good work in all of its forms, and you'll be a lot happier in the long run, and just a lot easier to be around. So I always try to stay very, very open-minded. Now I'm mapping. I love the mapping phase is amazing. It's how far you can take a drawing by just mapping. There is no tone in this right now. All it is edge and line in front of lines to show depth, and also the edges which are starting to prepare for where the tone's going to go in, which will really kick it up a notch when we do that. But right now, I'm just having fun. Trying to take it as far as I can. Sometimes I'll just challenge myself and say, today, I'm just going to take my lay-in as far as I absolutely can take it. And I might spend the whole 3 hours on just a lay-in and see how many abstractions I can create, how many new abstractions or embellished abstractions I can pull. And that means to take the abstractions that I know and start exploring them. Because again, remember, the abstraction is based on a wireframe that is subcutaneous bone, meaning bone that is at the surface, and how the muscles intertwine and overlap around that bone structure. So what we're doing is we're navigating with part bone and part muscle knowledge. And in order to do it at a virtuoso level, we have to be able to know both of those things. We can't just be, you know, a lot of people ignore the skeleton. They don't want to study it. It's macabre. They don't like it. This and that. I mean, you've got to be good at it. So I don't know what people's problem is with skeletons, but I love the scaffolding of the body is one of the most cool designs, as well as helpful as far as how you design your figures. It's really absolutely necessary that you understand it incredibly well, very intuitively. Right?
Can you maybe talk about how you break down the structure of the hands?
Oh, hands are the bane of most artists' existence, and they're behind the head. They're the most expressive part of the body, and there's, you know, when you get them a certain way, my dad always says it's like drawing a clump of bananas. It's just, they're equally spaced. You want asymmetry in the hand. I will go a long ways to invent that asymmetry if possible. And I know someone had asked about hands and feet, and I forgot to answer that question about who to study. There are so many good sources out there, but you know, if you want really accurate hands and feet, then an artist like you know, William Bouguereau would be good. Alphonse Mucha is awesome. Frazetta does nice graphic, strong hands that aren't overly rendered. So he's a good one to study for Bridgman-esque hands. Bridgman has a great section on hands. Hogarth is pretty good at hands, but they're a little bit, again, too heavy on the flowing lines, which are something that I like to get more straights in there. So when you think about the big picture of straights and curves needing to be in a drawing in order to balance the drawing and make a pictorially attractive arrangement, then we get into the realm of how do we coordinate, or how do we utilize our straights and our curves to get the most ideal, or the most bang for our buck for our drawing. So I look at someone like Hogarth and I say, okay, I like Hogarth's hands. Those are one of the things I've studied more from him, hands and feet. But they still are a little too curvy for me. Spaghetti hands, you know, too many curves. So I'll look to someone like Bridgman. But then I say, well, maybe too many straights. So then I'll go to someone like Frazetta, and Frazetta really is like Bridgman in paint. He's a clean version of Bridgman, so he's a great one to complement the study of Bridgman. And I'll go over that when I do that phase online. I'll talk about how you utilize Frazetta, Bridgman, and photo reference to splice together to study Bridgman correctly. Because there's an art to studying Bridgman, and it's not just picking up the book and copying it. You'll have a very difficult time doing that. So hands are, you know, you want to know, that's one area of the body I cannot recite all the musculature and all the little tendons and bone protrusions and stuff. I'm really quite good at drawing them, but I do have a long ways to go, or room to go in hands, to be quite frank. I'm not going to pull any punches with that one, but I do know that I do really love them, and I do them well. I have a lot more exploration of them that I need to do, but I have studied them a fair amount. But like I said, I mean, it doesn't matter how much you've studied something, you still need to be realistic with the fact that you could always do more, and there's always more that can be learned about them. Sculpture is a great way to learn hands, so doing a splayed hand in clay can be really nice. Kind of hard to find good books on that, so sometimes you just got to dig up anatomy books, build a scaffolding or an armature. They're not that bad, just as long as they hold the clay. They don't have to be pretty. And then just going in and sculpting a hand, you know, like all the tendons and everything, and getting in there and really diving into it. And we may do that down the road. I've done a lot of crochet classes. I've sculpted a lot. I wouldn't call myself a professional sculptor, but I can hold my own in the medium, and I do love sculpting as a training tool. And anatomical sculpting is probably one of the best ways to really learn your anatomy at an intuitive level, but it's hard to find people that do it well. Shout out to one of my former students, Alicia Ponzio, who later went and studied at the Florence Academy. She's up in San Francisco, and she does a mean crochet class, and she's phenomenal. I mean, she studied with us for many, many years, probably 5 years, and then taught for us for a short period of time before going off and studying sculpture over there. And she is just killing it right now. She's doing so good. She teaches a lot at Pixar and up in that area, and she's just phenomenal. Really proud of her. She's done so awesome. But anyway, yeah, so hands, feet, you know, you got to study them like everything else and get good photo reference on them. At least you can shoot your own hands, have your, you know, pose them and have somebody else take photographs of them, direct light, you know, get them under direct light so that they are easy to study. And you can find quite a bit of reference on them as well in books and magazines and stuff. So just kind of key into them and start studying them a lot. Do lay-ins of them. Keep your eye out for other artists that do them well. Copy from those artists. As far as master studies, my God, anybody's fair game for master studies. Just make sure it's somebody you want to work like. If you want to, sometimes you want to study someone that's really heavy on composition, or someone that's really good at heads or anatomy or whatever. So you want to pinpoint the artists that move you. And that's always how I pick my masters. They're the people that I want to study are the people that I want to work like. So it's very common sense. You know, you're not going to hurt yourself by doing a study of somebody unless you don't want to draw like them, and then you're studying from them. Then you might have some problems.
Richard Neely likes to go out and do sketches of people at shops and malls and stuff. He's wondering if he could use the same techniques that are taught in the Phase 3 quick sketch, or if there's another method for that.
No, I mean, you know, sketchbooking is a phase, is something that I want to do as a class, and we're teaching it next term at the actual atelier, and we usually all teach it different because the way people do sketchbooking is very individual. It's really one of the places you can really explore your own identity. It's almost like a diary, a visual diary. It's what I think of. You know, Steve Silver, who is a wonderful artist. He's up in LA, works at Nickelodeon. He does some mean sketchbooking, and he used to, you know, put these little books together from Starbucks, where he would sit at Starbucks and just draw, you know, all the time the people from Starbucks, and they were just these wonderful little sketchbooks that he would put together. And you know, he took classes with us for a short period of time when he was quite young, but he was a really great guy to have around. And I think sketchbooking like that, where if you're doing it, you know, at the airport or at a cafe, it's quick sketching for sure. So you can use some of that quick sketch knowledge, but you're also going to be dealing with drapery, which, you know, again, is, you know, you have to get into studying your drapery. Eric did a really mean phase on that, or, you know, really great phase on our online school, the 7 key folds and learning how to draw those. So first you want to start by studying, you know, again, expression, whether you want to do more caricature type sketching in cafes and stuff. Will Terrell, who's another student here, who's also, a lot of you know, another great guy that we have around, does a mean sketchbooking too. I mean, he's really awesome at that kind of sketching. And so you can look on his blog and stuff and kind of check out what he's doing. He's been a, you know, really neat. He's a neat guy. Just got a great style. So, you know, guys like that, you just kind of look around on the internet, look at what's being done, look at what people are doing. You can definitely utilize the information we're giving you. the key is to take the information around the concepts or the areas that you want to explore. If you want to be a cartoonist or a caricature artist, the Riley method would be phenomenally helpful for you to be able to take the abstractions and the rhythm grids and to manipulate them and idealize them 20%, 50%, 100%, how far you want to caricature the person you're drawing. But those grid lines allow you to quickly establish the person's likeness and type. And if you're a cartoonist or a caricature artist, a lot of times you only have a matter of minutes to do that. And any system that's going to help you to do that is going to be a godsend for you. So yeah, if you're a sketch artist, definitely use that information that's in the phase 3 for sure. But you're also basically, the biggest problem I had with working with caricature guys is they usually come to representation a lot through caricature. And they have so many bad habits because they're so used to exaggerating the form like 50%, 60%. Try to get them to draw it accurately is almost impossible because they've ingrained so much distortion in the process of their art, their craft, that they have to go and unlearn some of that. And that can be really hard if they've been doing it for 10 years, 20 years. The longer they've been doing it, the harder it is to get them to kind of tone it down. It would be better to come from a really strong representational background, accurate background, and then learn to caricature. I would definitely say that would be a more ideal way to go about it. But a lot of times, caricature is a great way to make a living as a young artist. You can usually do it at theme parks, Disney. You know, we had a lot of guys that worked at SeaWorld and the zoo, and they were caricature artists, and they were in their early 20s, late teens, early 20s, and they were making really good money doing caricature. And so it was a wonderful job for that. But a lot of them didn't take the time to go back to school or to learn traditionally, and so they're kind of stuck in a very narrow range that's hard to get out of. And if you do it for too long, it's kind of really hard to get out of it because you've ingrained so many habits.
Didn't Lucas start as that?
Yeah, Lucas started that way. Graciano is one of our better illustrators from the school now and teaches here. Started at Legoland. He was a caricature artist in his early 20s when I met him. And he was painting and drawing here. But, you know, he was one of those guys that again, you know, Court Jones, who's a phenomenal caricature artist, was one of our teachers as well as one of our students for many, many years. And so many of you may know him. I mean, he's won like every major award in caricature, and he's just a phenomenal caricature artist. But, you know, are awesome. I mean, he can go either really traditional or really caricature. It's way outside the range of most caricature artists. So he's got this really sweet spot that he can do anything, really. Go ahead, Brian.
As far as skill building, what's good about doing a longer effort like this one compared to quick sketches? And what are the specific skills each one builds?
Well, quick sketch is all about quick analyzation skills, designing on the fly, learning how to manipulate and idealize and invent because the model's changing in front of you and they may take a really dynamic pose that they can't really quite hold, so the arm starts up high and it's up low, and you got to kind of not chase the arm but work from your recall. So when you're working in quick sketch, you're developing, it's almost like, think of it like running. You have long distance runners and you have sprinters. Doesn't mean that a long distance runner doesn't do sprinting to help develop different aspects of the musculature or the way that the muscles work. But he may dominate or emphasize distance running as his actual, you know, his shtick, but he still trains in sprints occasionally to balance himself out. And the long runner, or the long distance runner does that, and the short distance runner a lot of times doesn't only just run short distances. They also train in many diverse ways in order to perfect and to get the most out of their ability. So long drawings cultivate the ability, like really this is a big quick sketch that I'm able to take a lot further. So at leisure I can explore aspects of rendering, aspects of bringing up the anatomy to a higher level, things that I would never be able to do in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So ultimately, if you're saying, well, all I ever want to be is a storyboard artist, and that's all I ever want to do, well then, okay, you've got a very, very ridiculously specialized area that you want to go into, and I would not advise that, but then maybe you would want to spend most of your time just doing quick sketches. But still, I mean, most of you are going to go in and out of many, many different careers if that's what you're driven towards. And you need to be able to do everything. You can't just hang your hat on one skill set. So you're going to want to do your long drawings. You're going to want to do your... It's like in painting. We do gesture painting and we do long painting. Some paintings can take hundreds of hours to execute. But to be able to take that 100 hours and distill it down into a 10-hour painting or a 2-hour painting or a 40-minute painting, that is an incredible skill set to have. And so you want to train in both gesture and in long effort. You never want to just do one or the other, in my opinion.
When will anatomy classes start for the online school?
I think the first one that Eric did is coming out in the next couple months. I think somewhere around November. Mine will be coming out later in the probably late, sometime next summer maybe, or thereabouts. But that's actually one that actually comes before the one that Eric's releasing. It's not going to hurt you to do Eric's phase before you do the other phase. Ultimately, you're going to want to do those phases many different times because there's so much information that's going to be in them that you're going to want to revisit them periodically to bone back up on your skills. So that's my goal, is probably in the next year we'll have 2 phases out. Eric's also going to be laying down another one, which is basically at our school we have the Bridgman anatomy, which is not really, it's kind of an overview of how to study Bridgman properly and how to get your head around studying anatomy intuitively. And then we have these intensives where you actually explore for 5 weeks, you do legs, and for 5 weeks you do arms. And you study the bones and where the muscles connect. And it's very academic. And that's what we call anatomy intensives. And they're a little bit more specific than some of the more invented type anatomy, which you'll get to after you've learned your academic anatomy. So those ones will be coming out, 2 of them, or 3 of them will be coming out in the next year, year and a half. The more advanced ones like sculptural anatomy will be pretty far down the road because I've got to get back into training sculpture in order to get my skill sets back up so that I can lay it down. So a lot of times when I want to lay one of these phases down, it takes me, the more complicated ones, I might have to train for 6 months very specifically on a pretty regular basis to be able to justify or put down this knowledge at the highest level possible that I'm capable of. And that's what I want. I don't want to be putting down a phase unless I can put it down at the best of my ability at this time. And that's why I'm working so diligently to put all this stuff down, because I've been at this now, running our atelier now for about, 20 years, 24 years. Spent 2 or 3 years before that training. So, 25, 26 years in. And my career is wanting to get some attention. And so I feel strongly about laying down these concepts for the future generation, as well as for you guys that aren't able to get out here to study with us, while I'm at the strongest I'll ever be in these areas. And there's not a lot of artists that have done that or have taken the time to do that when they could have. So I feel really strongly about it, but man, it's an amazing behemoth project. So I've had to put my whole career on hold while I'm doing it. So not that matters, it's just a lot of these phases will take time to get to you because they need to be done properly. And when you do finally get them, you're going to be very thankful because they're going to be something else. And they're going to be very difficult to find anything that's probably even close to being comparable. And that's my goal, is to put down some of the best content and really highlight this incredible technique that has done so much for me, and share that with people so that they can also understand these concepts so that they can help themselves in their careers and their goals and their dreams, and not just be this kind of specialized information that only a handful of people know. So anyway, that's the goal. But it's going to take some time. But we've already done a great job, and we're already moving in a really good direction. So I think there's a lot to look forward to with the online content coming forward. It's going to be pretty amazing. Let's go ahead and take a break, and I'll be back in a little bit. Right now, it looks pretty good. The head's a little big, arm's a little short, but not too alarming. I'll keep messing around with it a little bit. The shape's a little bigger than it is, so it's kind of made the head look a little larger, and I may cut a little bit of that off to see if I can bring that head down a little bit. But there's always something on the drawing that's going to be a little bit bugging you, especially when you're just, coming in kind of cold after a break. Anyway, having fun, and I hope you guys are enjoying. I'll be back in a few minutes to keep going. That's the last part. No, I haven't yet. I'm getting 3 books together, so I'm shooting everything and trying to document before I sell anything. I want to make sure I get them photographed properly, and then if they're going to go in a book, then I'll have them. As soon as I'll sell something, I'll go, man, I'll show that, I can put that in a book. Not all these are that good, but some of them I have to go. What I do is I pull them out of my pad. I can pull these out of a pad from last term, and I'll go through them all, and I'll categorize them according to these are the A drawings, these are B drawings. Then my opinion, and then I'll shoot them, and then compile them, and then what I'll probably ultimately do is and then just that's all. Probably, I don't know yet. But I don't sell a lot of drawings right now because I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Yeah. But at some point I will.
What about,
I just did that one in the boot camp. That was yeah, it's a nice one. I couldn't believe I thought somebody in boot camp would love it, but they didn't. So I have to think about it. I mean, no, it's a really nice piece. So
because I love the other one.
yeah, that's a good one.
I can't find these frames are so good.
Oh, you can. Oh, yeah. These are all Mexican frames too. You actually they're fairly cheap. I can try to direct you to maybe somebody should buy some if you want.
Because I don't get a frame that doesn't do justice.
Yeah, those are actually cheap frames, man. The Mexican one, relatively. I mean, because you can spend a lot of money on framing. So you want to, these are all really, really cheap frames actually.
If you could tell me where to get the numbers.
Yeah.
These some nice ones you got here, the frames.
These little
Really-
the drawing ones.
Really high quality frames you got going there.
I'm like, they're $5 from Walmart. I wish they still sold them at Walmart. They don't do it anymore.
That's a
No.
bummer.
I don't know why they discontinued them. I don't know. But they're perfect for sliding these
Yeah.
and these things. I mean, that's the thing is they work perfect for that.
Do you get stuff framed, or do you actually frame it yourself?
Everything now is, well, for my fine art, it's all custom ordered and it's
Yeah.
all custom made per
Wow.
painting.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're in shows where they expect you to frame comparable to the people in the show.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're the low guy at the low end price wise, and guys like Turpin and Mian,
Yeah.
and they expect you to put the same frame quality as they have. So it really bums you out.
So they have some pretty crazy frames.
Yeah, they're not ridiculously expensive. Like there's a place called Montgomery Frames that's out in Arizona that does most of all the painters in the 3 to West and all the Trailside and all of the Western stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, they can range up, from 500 to a couple thousand a frame,
Wow.
depending. But if you're,
Yeah.
if you're looking at someone like me and it's making $300,000 a painting,
Yeah.
$3,000 frame is nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
Not bad at
no,
all.
it's not a big deal.
But
But
like
if you're
high quality
making $10,000 on a painting and you're putting a $2,000
Yeah.
frame on it, and they're taking 50% of it, afterwards, that gets a little painful. But you don't. I mean, it doesn't have to be that ridiculous. But a lot of times the galleries will pressure you to try to put comparable framing, and they don't like it if you come in with a really cheap frame. They just will not.
Are they more ornate, or did they look different?
They're just made a lot. I mean, they're made better. Their patinas are better. The edges, like on a lot of these Mexican frames, they don't kiln dry the wood properly, and
Yeah.
it'll split in the corners when it goes in and out of different climates.
Okay.
So if you set it from a dry climate to a wet climate and then
Yeah.
back to a dry climate or something, the
like
edges, the corners will open a lot of times, and then you can't. You have to either have somebody refinish them, you
Yeah.
gotta sand them down, re-gold leaf them, or metal leaf them, and by that time it's not even worth doing. So those frames can't be shown anymore. So they just become studio frames where you just put a painting in while you want to see what it looks like or something,
Yeah.
which sucks. Because
Yeah.
I've had so many horror stories with framing over the years. I mean, I've just cannot even tell you how much framing bugs me. But sometimes also people are very particular. They're spending a lot of money on a painting. They want to
Yeah.
frame it themselves.
Huh.
They usually want a very particular kind of frame.
Makes sense. But
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
something that goes with their.
So a lot of times you put these expensive
Yeah.
frames on them, and then the client will ask for a frame allowance. I want the frame. So
Yeah.
you'll say, well, how much can you take off for the frame? And then you're stuck with some odd size frame that you
Yeah.
really don't want for another painting, or you have to paint something specifically for that frame now. And so I know Meadow, every fine artist I know, that's the bane of their existence is
Yeah.
framing.
How do you ship them?
Carefully.
Carefully.
Yeah, and they always get
Pack 'em
damaged.
well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance of either the gallery damaging them while one of their guys is moving them around and not,
Yeah.
dinging them against stuff, or
Yeah.
slotting them poorly in the back of the, storage areas.
Yeah.
And usually they really won't compensate you for that. And once they get scratched up, it's always like, no, I think it happened in they always pass the buck. Oh, it was at FedEx, or it was. But you really can't insure them either. It's very difficult to insure paintings in transit. Like I think FedEx will only insure up to $500.
Man.
And after that, I had a
Yeah.
$15,000 painting stolen from FedEx
Really?
in transit.
Jeez.
I never found it. It's gone. I don't
You
know
were
what.
shipping
Yeah,
it to a
it's
client?
We're shipping to a client that bought it, a really great collector, when I was very young. And I was doing that really tight, kind of Clark Hewing type painting, and it was this really cool painting. And it just disappeared somewhere in Georgia.
And you give the client his money back?
The gallery insurance, luckily I had gotten paid, There's a gallery made the mistake of paying me too quick.
Oh, so you, oh, you
I
were
got
fine.
paid, but the insurance company they had insurance, the gallery did, and their insurance company had to pay.
And the
for it.
client is fine and you're fine, just the galleries.
The client was mad because they never got the painting, and it was a good client. So it was unfortunate. It left a bad taste in their mouth. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It just, we declared the value of it in transit, and that was a mistake. Because somebody saw the declared value and just sold it.
So $0 next time.
Yeah, you want to, so I've learned over the years, you just got to be very careful about what you claim. It's best to say, well, it's worth nothing.
So the most one
Yeah,
more
just,
thing.
or drive it yourself, or do
Yeah.
something. I mean, I used to drive all my paintings out to Arizona because I just got so tired of the problems that happened in shipping, you
Makes
know?
sense, yeah.
And I know Meadow and Eric do that still. They drive out to Tucson with
Yeah,
it.
Eric mentioned once that he had a painting broken in half.
Yeah,
I forget who
no.
he shipped it with, but it was that piece of masonite actually broken in half.
Yeah, forklift through one of them, you know,
Yeah.
the forklift go through one,
Yeah, it's
you know?
crazy.
Oh.
Yeah,
Those things are hard to
they
break.
just, yeah, I mean, you gotta imagine those guys are like, it's like Samsonite commercial. These guys are just freaking winging those things,
Yeah.
man. And they don't care. It's like fragile. Oh, I'm gonna give that one even more. You know, I mean, that's the last thing you want. You put fragile over it, and that's guaranteed. They're gonna get extra. They're not all that bad, but I swear, you'll see some of the boxes come back and and they've got big gashes cut in them, and corners are smashed in, and you don't know what is going on with with them. So crates are the best, but custom wood crating a painting is expensive and heavy and hard to ship because it's all on weight and size.
Oh,
So, you know, they'll charge you a ton for shipping that stuff. So shipping is, like, Meadow's got a good gig now where her gallery actually, her work.
yeah. Oh, okay.
So she just sends the
Yeah.
painting and they frame it for her.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
nice.
That's a good one. Yeah,
That's
if you get a gallery, because a lot of galleries will have a frame shop built into the gallery because they make a lot of their money on framing.
Really?
Yeah, like my greenhouse, the gallery I was with, they had
Yeah.
an incredible framing business. It actually started as a framing company and turned into a gallery.
Oh, okay.
And so they always had a huge, and they would always, even, that's the thing that always made me mad, is they would always talk the client out of my frame so that they could reframe them and make more money. And I get sick of my frame, and I'm like, you guys, come on, man. I mean, it's so frustrating. So yeah, framing is, it's terrible. I hate framing. You really brought up, someone, did you bring that up?
I think so. We were talking about.
Oh yeah, we started talking about
yeah.
framing, yeah. No, and then I bought all these Mexican frames, and then they all split in the corners, and that's when I found out about the wood issue and it not being dried properly, and then I took them back, and the guy luckily, he gave me new frames, but it was like thousands of dollars of frames that were destroyed,
Man.
just broke apart in the corners.
Would you still recommend them? Because you just recommended them.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, a lot of these little guys aren't bad, it just depends. I mean, again, if there's not a lot of options. You just gotta kind of roll your dice with them and hope that they were properly dried. A lot of them, like, again, if you're not shipping them in and out, change to automatically, you're not gonna have a problem with it. I stopped using them professionally because, again, they would ship from here to like Jackson Hole, Wyoming in the wintertime. And it'd be like sitting on the tarmac in -5-degree weather or something. And the things would just, you know, the wood would expand and contract, you know, with a different climate. And that's when you have the problems. But if you're just hanging them in your house and you buy them here or something, or you transport them yourself or whatever, you're probably not gonna have that big of a problem. And again, the frames, like a frame, like one of those frames up there might be $40, $50, you know, versus hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Aaron Brothers, might be the biggest ripoff on the planet. I mean, they might be a 200% markup or something. I think because Brad used to work there, and he said they mark up like 100 to 200%. So they'll give you a 1 cent sale, but you're paying 100% over for the one, and then by the time you get the one for 1 cent, you're getting them for 100% over instead of 200%.
Yeah.
So yeah, any kind of custom framing, that's why you want to paint standard sizes too, because if you paint anything out of a standard size, you're going to have that custom frame, and it'll cost you 5 times as much to custom frame something as it would just to buy a ready-made 16 by 20 or 18 by 24. You always see these artists that paint like 33 1/4 by 27 5/8, and it's like it's always something weird, you know. It's like
That's just study the shows.
yeah, that was all for the boot camp. Those are all demos I did during, one for the landscape, one for the master studies,
So
and
that
one.
was a fetch.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't look like her though. It looks like her older sister. It was a really young, beautiful girl, and I just could not get the likeness. It looks nice and it looks like a fetching, but it does not nothing like her. Now I was really disappointed with the likeness, but
You know, you could always show some of those online.
yeah.
During the break.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, maybe next break I'll since they're here, sitting here. Okay. Let's see. What time is it? Oh, cool. I've got plenty of time.
Plenty. old
Plenty
time.
old time. Okay. So we're going to get back in here, and you guys probably heard us bantering about frames and me whining about how much I hate them. Framing the bane of the artist's existence for most fine artists. But yeah, you know, I try not to. I get off in these. I've been doing this for so long, and I've been through so much. I'm going to get my head there because I dropped my eraser, but. You know, I don't mean to come off in any kind of negative sense, and I hope you don't take it that way. I'm really a very positive person. It's just, you know, sometimes, you know, I go off on these benders to hopefully, you know that my intentions are good. But yeah, you know, again, I try to answer things honestly based on my experiences, and it doesn't mean that your experiences are going to be the same by any means. But I have seen a lot, and I've done a lot. You know, and my dad's also a really wonderful professional artist, as you saw a couple weeks ago when he was doing some demoing, and he'll do some more down the road on these. And he's laying down some amazing content that I'm so happy to get him putting down composition, because he's one of the best composers. I mean, he's so good, and he's so old school, and you just don't find guys teaching that kind of stuff that way anymore that often, because they're just not that readily available, and they don't teach that stuff as much in the schools now. The thing you want to be careful about in education nowadays is that everything, as it goes more digital, certain things are left out that could be very instrumental in your development as a digital artist that may come more from a traditional bend. So you always want to be very, very careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Be like, oh, that's cliche, that's passé, that's not worth learning anymore, because now I don't do that. But you might, when you learn tactile sensitive mediums like charcoal, ink, painting, gouache, acrylic, oil, your mind has to bend the knowledge and its ability to think a certain way. And that's really the beauty of it. It's not the medium itself, it's what it forces the brain to do in its process of having to learn it, that you can take back into digital and maybe separate yourself from somebody else that does not have that range in their knowledge base, or that range in their intellectual capacity, or the way the brain develops, because it's still very cryptic and difficult to really fully understand how perception and memorization visually and all that kind of stuff, and intuition, visual intuition, and these concepts work. We really don't have a benchmark for measuring them, and we don't really quite know how they're put in place, and we don't really quite know how the brain functions to put them in place. So you don't know what's going to give you that great edge that could Bernini or Fetchin or you know, Frazetta. And again, I love digital. I mean, I absolutely am enamored with some of the stuff that's being done with it. But I also see some limitations to it. And again, I don't think it has to be that way. I think, you know, artists could really benefit both from digital and from traditional. And so for those of you out there watching that haven't yet kind of, you're younger and maybe you didn't have a lot of school and you picked up digital from tutorials online and copying other guys, which is great. Try to use these cheaper ways of training, like online with us or something, as a way to get your traditional chops up, so that you can now put those together and also be one of those artists that shows at a LexCon or something and sells your original art. Because there's nothing like selling originals. There's nothing like doing originals. Ultimately, if you ask any artist across the board if they would want to do original artwork, they're all going to say they would love to do it. They just maybe didn't have the luxury of getting the training to be able to allow them to do it. But now you can get it. You can get it for a fraction of what it would cost to go to these ridiculous boutique schools that are ridiculously expensive. And I'm not going to mention any names, but you guys all know who they are. So there's no need to even mention that. But I don't think it's necessary, really. And again, you know, it is, there's a lot you're going to have in the next 10 years or so. And so take advantage of them if you can. And really try to get your traditional skills up as well as your digital, for sure. And don't neglect either one of them. But you know, the traditional will take you a fair amount longer than the digital will. So just know that ahead of time, and you'll be okay. Go ahead, Dave.
What's a good quality paper for longer drawings, and are there any that feel like newsprint?
Like I said, I've tried to find them, and I don't do a ridiculous amount of long drawings. I probably do 5 or 6 a year. I'm too busy teaching this stuff, and usually, again, for me, doing long studies is kind of a luxury now. And I do like them, and I do enjoy doing it. It's just so, I use a Fabriano a lot. There's different kinds of Fabriano handmade papers. Strathmore makes, even just a Strathmore or a Bristol Strathmore, like 500 weight or, kind of a satin finish can be really nice. Again, charcoal, I use graphite when I go to those long drawings because I like to render at a higher level, and I like the feel of graphite for long drawings. So if I was to use charcoal, I quite frankly do not do that many long charcoal drawings, that are on archival services. For me, drawing has always been a stepping stone to painting, and it's just a way to maintain my hand in painting cheaply. So although I'm a really nice draftsman and I enjoy drafting and I always will love the art of drawing, I see it as a stepping stone and not as something that I do to make money or to so it's not something that I've really ventured that heavily into trying to find a surface like that because it is, again, there's really no need. Because if you think about drawings, if you look at the craftsman that's ever lived, some of them, Fetchin, one of my favorites, Michelangelo. Okay, now when you get to Michelangelo or something like that, yeah, his drawings are going to be really valuable because of the name. But even Fetchin, who's arguably one of the greatest draftsmen of all time, right up there with Holbein and the rest of those guys, you might be able to buy one of his original best drawings ever for 10 grand. Now that's pretty amazing because that's like one of the best draftsmen that's ever been on the face of the planet. And his $10 million. So you're looking at a difference that's so ridiculous monetarily. So what am I saying? Drawings do not command the respect that painting does. They never will. They never have. Just the way it is. And it's unfortunate. But they're just. And again, I'm not saying. So to me, what do we use drawing for? We use it to learn how to paint cheaply. That's all we do. I save my drawings. Why? Because I can't get enough for them to even be worth even selling. I don't even want to sell them. By the time I frame them, mat them, and the gallery takes 50% of them, I'd rather keep the drawing. And the government comes in and takes their 30% or whatever. I'm pretty much giving the drawing away. So for me, I'll sell it to some of my friends, but I don't normally sell my drawings. I keep them because it's just not worth it to me to sell them. I would much prefer having them. So that's why I don't really worry too much about that. But as archival aspects, or if you just want to do something archivally, then yeah, just start buying different papers and start playing around with them. Just do little experiments with them, do little master studies with them, and copy one of my drawings with it and see if you like the way it feels. And if it does, I mean, there's really no, because I might love a paper, or I might love a canvas surface, and you might analyze it. And it doesn't mean that just because I like it, it's going to be good for you. The reason, again, I try to get you to use this is just because it's so cheap, and you're going to be doing thousands of going through the online program and trying to learn how to draw as well as we do, that why would you want to use a $2.50 piece of paper every time you do a drawing? You'd go broke trying to learn how to draw. Whereas in a piece of newsprint, it's maybe 7 cents or something, or 5 cents. So I just will keep encouraging you to do that. But if you do want to do archival, just experiment. Try Strathmore, try Canson, try Fabriano, try the different papers. Every time you go into an art store, buy a couple sheets, bring it into class for your Friday night workshop or something, or if you have an open workshop, and try it. And start take notes. Get a little notepad and list what paper it is, list what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and try to start formulating your own opinion of what you like, because your surface choices are going to be very unique to you, and they should be, because your style ultimately is going to reflect that, probably more so than almost anything else. So I would say experiment.
Jeff Paxson wants to know what your opinions are on John Buscema, and he says to him he feels he's underappreciated because he did comics.
Oh man, that guy's all time. Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 books on him, always copying in my sketchbook some of his work. I love his stuff, I mean, what a great designer, great, powerful anatomy draftsman. I love his stuff. I love the way he does ankles and feet and knees, and I don't know, there's a lot of little particular things that I study from him. So yeah, I do think he's underappreciated, but again, you're going to find most of the best draftsmen, figurative draftsmen throughout time, well, not throughout time, because it hasn't been around that long, but in the comic industry has some of the best figurative draftsmen, in my opinion. And so I'm a huge fan of his, and I study from him regularly. Him and, Buscema, and I'm trying to think of a bunch of them that aren't coming totally to the forefront of my brain right now because I'm processing so much information. But they'll come to my mind as I'm sketching here, and I'll throw them out. But yeah, I'm always picking up sketchbooks from at Comic Con and stuff of different artists that, whether it's Claire Wendling or it could be Adam Hughes, or there's a lot of great comic artists out there that can really push a pencil and push design and are even good, across the board are just great artists. So I'm a huge fan of that industry, huge fan.
How do you as an artist go about breaking bad habits?
Well, I mean, now I have guys that I've trained originally or helped train. When I say I've trained them, it's really kind of a pompous thing to say, and it's really not totally 100% correct. I created an environment in which they could grow into great artists, and I created a curriculum. And so in a way, yes, you got a huge amount to do with it because you gave them that opportunity and space from which to develop, which is absolutely essential. But when I look at them, they are as much of an influence to me now as I was to them when they were learning. So I learned things from Eric, I learned things from Lucas, I learned things from all the guys I originally helped train, now help train me in a lot of ways. I ask them a lot of times, hey, I'll ask Eric. Eric might be just strolling. He might be teaching a painting class across from me, and I'm teaching a drawing class, or I'm drawing in a class that I'm just taking the class. And Eric will be strolling around, and I'll say, hey, Eric, what do you think about this head? Is that the right size, or what do you think? Because after you've been on a drawing for a couple hours or whatever, you just can't even really see straight most of the time. You're starting to almost get tunnel vision, no matter how good you are. And it just takes another good eye and say, hey, what do you think? Oh yeah, man, that head looks a little big to me. Well, that's what I thought. Thanks. And then so I have the luxury of having people around that have good eyes. If you're stuck somewhere where you don't have the luxury of someone with good eyes, you still can ask somebody that has it. Like, a lot of people are good critiques even though they don't know how to draw, like your husband, your wife, your friends, your family members. Just say, what does it look like? Does it look weird to you? Yeah, it doesn't really work for me. What bugs you? I don't know, something to do with the head. Now it's your job to go, okay, and now maybe ask somebody else in the family. Yeah, and just don't maybe play a game and say, don't tell so-and-so what you just told me. And let them say, oh yeah, something with the head kind of bugs me. If it picks up on that head issue, probably something in the head is wrong. They don't need to know what. They don't need to tell you, oh yeah, it's because of this or that, or your eyes are too close, or this. It's your job to know that. But sometimes you just need somebody to help pinpoint or help to kind of tell you that you're kind of right about your hunches. But ultimately, it is hard to fix your own drawings. It's hard. I mean, it's hard when you go home by yourself and you're sitting there and you're grinding it out with nobody there to help you. And that's why you're gonna have to lean heavily on, if you're in a situation like that, you're gonna have to rely heavily on the videos that I do or someone like me to really use that as your anchor point. That's the only thing that I can come up with. Books are gonna be okay too, but again, they're not gonna be talking to you, and they're not gonna be you're not able to go back and review them and go back and see the process happening. You're gonna see still shots, if you're lucky, drawings that happen, but most of them don't even have that. They just have a finished drawing. Like Loomis. I mean, it's mostly just finished drawings. And you've got to sit and try to figure out how he got from point A to point B without ever seeing him do that, because he's not alive anymore and you can't go sit in on a class. So that's some slow learning. I mean, that's going to be a lot slower than watching someone who's really good put it down right in front of you and then be able to rewind it, watch it again, watch it again, watch it again, watch it again 20 times, 30 times, 50 times, whatever it takes, till you can do that same process. So that's where you're really going to benefit. But if you're studying, again, in a vacuum, you're stuck somewhere where you just don't have access to really good instruction, that's probably going to be your best friend, your best bet, because it'll keep you from totally derailing. And you can use the artists that are as anchor points for yourself to be able to learn how to do that same process on your own. You'll have to pull a lot of information, like study the information and then be able to bend it on your own. But that's something you'd have to do even if you were in classes with us. You'd still have to ultimately learn how to do that.
Can you talk about your technique in the shading approach, and what's your opinion about putting dark first for your key?
Establishing the full range of your drawing, or, your values is not a bad idea. A lot of painters work that way. A lot of draftsmen work that way. I'm kind of working my way up to my lightest lights. My lightest lights are already established. It's the light of the paper. but I'm working my midtones up towards my crescendo of my darkest darks, and way towards that. So there's really two common ways to work in painting, and it's either work on a tone canvas and work your midtones up to your lightest lights and darkest darks, like I'm doing kind of in this situation, even though the paper's not really a tone paper that much. Or you establish your, well, you know, so say you have a midtone like gray and you're painting on it. You might go in and hit the darkest dark somewhere in the hair in this case, or in the eye or the pupil, and then one of your lightest highlights, and then work your range around that. Work your way up to that. So you're either going to establish it immediately or you're going to work your way up to it. Those are the only two really ways that are common to work in painting. And so whichever way you choose to do, sometimes it depends on my mood, how confident I feel that day, what the model situation is, how advanced I am, how well I judge value without needing a full value range. Newer, a lot of times establishing that full value range can be helpful, or working on a tone canvas instead of a white canvas, because you're having a hard time judging your values properly. So the technique of shading, I'm trying to shade mostly on a downstroke, but I encourage my students to do that. You want to kind of avoid the patchiness. So you'll see me occasionally using my finger to smudge or to smooth out areas. Try to do that judiciously, meaning carefully, because a lot of times if you overshade with your fingers like that, you're going to find that you could get that Silver Surfer kind of look where everybody looks like they're kind of wet and shiny, and it's just not that good of a look. So I try to minimize my, because I like the look more of manual grittiness, a little bit of the grittiness of the shading when it's manual. And that's just maybe me, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily that's a total set in concrete type thing, but that's how I feel about it. So you'll have to make your own determination. This is a very difficult hand, by the way, that I'm trying to do here. You can go ahead and...
This kind of relates to the last one, but how do you recommend studying values?
Well, again, from live, from photos, from long studies, from master studies, from other people's drawings, lots of drawing, lots of careful drawing, lots of drawing where you're very vigilant and careful about observing the small juxtapositions that are in and around the drawing. So for me, when someone says, how do you study value? Well, you can study from casts as well. One place that I think Sight Size does really good job is in the first, say, year of a person's development when they're brand new to drawing and they just have no clue about values, no clue about edges, really don't know anything about what side of the pencil to use. Then putting them in a controlled situation with casts that don't move, lighting them directly so that the shadows are very obvious, and letting them spend a copious amount of time exploring values and edges very carefully can be very beneficial, I think. But quickly you'd want to pass by that and go, I think, into comparative measurement, where you're starting to learn to estimate your values based on, again, making really educated guesses. And the only way is by trial and error. And then hopefully just constantly, vigilantly watching yourself when you're doing that and making sure that you're doing the best job that you possibly can. So again, long studies from masters, long studies from other draftsmen that you admire, drawing from photos, drawing from casts, drawing from live models and life. All these things can be beneficial for cultivating a really great sense of value control. And that's the only way you can do it. You can't do it by reading a book. You're not gonna get good at values by reading about values in some book. It's just not gonna, it doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, you've got to get in and do the hard work. And that's with everything. So books are valuable, but they're not really valuable in art for reading as much. They're more valuable in the imagery that they contain. So I look for art books that are chock full of great images that I can copy. I seldom read them. I might read like The Art Spirit, or I might read The Twilight of Painting, or something like that, which is more of a philosophical book on painting, or has some significance in that realm. But that's more, again, philosophical aspect of drawing and painting, not the technical aspect of getting your chops up and getting your skill sets up. That comes from just, again, copious, meaning tons and tons of long efforts, short efforts, lay-ins, finishes, starts, paintings, monochromes, drawings, just a lot of stuff. But again, when I say that, it sounds like, oh my God, you know, listen to how much, I mean, it should be fun. I mean, if you can't stand to draw stuff like that, then you're in the wrong business. You know, find something else to do. I mean, it should be really fun for you. I love to study this stuff. So for me, it's like, I have a hard time with people going, well, I don't like to study anatomy because it's boring. It's like, well, man, then take up cribbage or something, or go learn how to play golf, or I don't know, something. But I mean, it's not, you're not going to get past it just because you don't like it. You're going to have to learn to like it. My job is to get you to like it. And that's a hard job sometimes, because some people just do not, they just can't wrap their head around certain things. But mostly, a lot of times it comes from either not being shown correctly, not having a technique really that's substantial that could be shown. So people get really frustrated. It'd be like, again, it's like if you teach math incorrectly or poorly, you could ruin somebody for math for their whole life just by having one bad teacher in algebra or something, pre-algebra when you're in 7th grade. It might put you in a tailspin for the rest of your life in math. You get one inspirational teacher when you love math and become a mathematician. It's just how you approach these hard methods, like how you approach anatomy and teaching it in an enjoyable manner is as important as what you're teaching. So if you got to find somebody that's so passionate about anatomy that they can convey that passion and get you passionate about it as well, even though you're not quite there yet. But that's my job, is to help instigate that, help to facilitate that, help to cultivate that. And whatever way I do that, through humor, through analogies, through quirkiness, sometimes through tough love, is whatever it takes to get you to make that connection. Well, cerulean is probably more tailored to landscape painting. That's what it's, but you can use it in portrait. I mean, there's nothing saying that you can't. It's a better sky blue than cobalt. Cobalt's a little cooler than cerulean. Cerulean has more yellow in it. So when you're painting like out on a sunny day and you want that blue of the sky, it's way better to have cerulean than cobalt. But cobalt's usually more of a go-to for indoor portrait painting. Get a cobalt hue or something. It's not gonna kill you. Like a full cobalt, like $4.
Cobalt versus ultramarine, why?
Ultramarine is way colder. It has a lot more red in it, so it's heading towards the purple side of the spectrum. So it's a cold blue, and it's probably the most standard cold blue that everybody uses. I always have ultramarine on my palette, and I almost always have cobalt when I'm painting or portrait stuff, or figure stuff. But I use lots of different kinds of blues: Prussian, phthalo, cobalt, cerulean. Prussian's but it's very staining. It's very similar to phthalo, so it's very dangerous blue because it's very strong. Way stronger. It's a dye color, kind of like phthalo, greenish and blue. They're all very dye colors. They're good, and they swallow up your whole. If you don't watch out, there's not many other colors that can temper. You have the use of those kind of colors, but they're wonderful. That would deter you from using them. You know, cerulean can be used.
I also don't have this one. I have yellow, red, and
You're going to need a warm. So here's a cool, kind of warm, somewhere in between. So cool, in between. So it's lemon yellow or cad yellow light, cad yellow, and cad yellow deep. So that's cad yellow. That's a warm. That's heading towards. So it's. Yeah, you know, just these two could. Or these two could work.
I have the light and red. I don't have.
Yeah, you need to train. You could take some of your red and mix. Maybe make one of those.
Yeah.
Or come close. So yeah, that's you probably come pretty close to this one. Mix these two. You'd probably come up with something sort of medium, or a warmer one by using the red.
I also bought a Caucasian flesh tone, which might have been bad because I'm assuming that I shouldn't be mixing my flesh tones. It's probably a mistake.
No, I mean it's hard. It's hard not to mix flesh tones. I mean it's so easy. It's just red, yellow, and white. So once you understand that concept and you're mixed up a couple, using a convenience flesh tone, I don't see a problem with it. Because you're gonna be adding it to it anyway. You're gonna be
for speed.
Yeah.
Be able to finish
Smart.
the thing in 3 hours.
smart. Yeah, no, that's not a problem. No, not unless you make it a crutch. You still want to learn how to mix your colors, and you should just play around with mixing all the time. And if you paint all the time like we do, you're always going to be playing around with it. So the key is not to try to treat oil paint like it's pastel and have every color pre-mixed. You have to mix it. And some people try to paint like that. They try to buy like, there's pre-mixed flesh tones and 9 values that you can buy like that are already ready mixed.
Well, so I'm afraid with buying all these paints is I feel like I'm not at a level where I should be owning all these paints. I need to learn to make them myself.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you still use the general premise behind, if you want to be, and I think you have a phenomenal general ability.
Just sitting on the couch with artists, kind of starts to hurt for me.
To use a lot of discipline in your initial stages of development because you are jumping past lots of
It
things.
does.
You are talented.
It really does.
So you're jumping past things and not doing it the hard way because you can. But it doesn't mean that that's going to make you a better painter in the long run. Right? So a guy like Eric who went through made it more methodically and learned these Riley methods and did all the pre-mixing and mixed them all up himself and had to learn how to do that, may ultimately be a stronger painter than someone who's more natural because he's more disciplined. And so you want to be careful with that you don't take your natural ability and just, it's easy to trick yourself into thinking that you can bypass certain things. When ultimately, if you want to be the best painter you could possibly be, it might be the difference between a Sorolla quality painter and someone that's not.
They had good.
If you had done it the right way, you could become a Sorolla.
Orange
If you don't, you might just become a decent painter that's really good.
Yeah,
Should I set the term on going back to zone path? Because I only ended up doing one and then I went to
That was like the only thing I got there. Then they just
So
continued.
should I
I would, but that's me. I mean, I would spend maybe half the term using Zorn and then half the term using full color palette. Things go half and half, you know.
I feel like all the ones I knew were pretty hard.
I know, it's gonna be tough. I'll just tell you what, you know, that I, you know, because I'm actually I was very fast learner, extremely fast, but yet still managed to force myself to do it the way that I should have, that people advised me to do. And I respected the guys that were advising me, so I said, okay, I don't want to go paint type. I understand what you're telling me, and I'm going to go paint type for 5 years, a lot of paintings, so I can later be a better painter. And sure enough, it worked. Man, that was a tough 5 freaking years. Hard. I know.
So, I didn't
No, I'm glad the in-and-outs
more shit on to try to be more
I'm only in there.
burns, I'm running away.
Yeah. I think, you know, I still enjoy going back and painting those things. That's why I was able to lay all that stuff down online too, so I can go back and revisit all these techniques that I remember I did tons of.
Yeah,
So
fast food is
it
pretty
takes
good.
me a very short period of time to go, oh, okay,
It's still
go.
fast food.
And for someone like me, well, I'm in a very specific situation where I'm laying it down for people that need to go through that tradition, places that you're not going to be coming here and talking about. So I have to know how to do all that stuff, but I would have never been able to do that. You know, so you may not have to do quite as much because you may not have that intention of laying it down like that, but you should do enough of it to where you master it and know that, oh yeah, I didn't want to do it. Because you don't know, you might teach someday or something, and you want to teach your students the right thing to do, not just like, hey, start where I'm at. I never did that stuff.
I once tried to
It seems to fluctuate between like.
So it really depends. But I mean, like for me, like, I have to know anatomy way better than most people because I have to teach it. If I didn't have to teach it, I probably wouldn't know all the names and have to memorize all of them because it really, I'm kind of, the verdict's out whether that's totally 100% absolutely necessary. But for teaching it is. You know, for teaching it's totally necessary.
It's a
So
cool thing that it forces you to know this extra stuff you really don't know.
yeah. Better. I mean, the more knowledge you know, it's never going to hurt you. It can't hurt you to know more. It can only limit you to not know. So if you know, you can always not use it, but you don't have an option to use it if you don't know it. So I always say, I mean, if you have the opportunity to learn at one age properly, and you have a window, take advantage of that window because later you're not going to want to go back and learn this stuff. You're going to be too past it, and then you're just be, oh, screw it, I'm going to go back to that. And you will always be less of a painter because you didn't learn it. I mean, yeah, that's the thing you're going to have to battle most because you are naturally quite fast at learning and skilled. So,
I need to clear these 2 semesters, so I feel like I fast forwarded my brain.
yeah, you've done a wonderful job. I mean, you really have. I mean, that's pretty, that was impressive flow. But again, development over the next, I don't know, you're going to be doing it for so young, that you really want to look really long term and don't sell yourself short because you could be or you could just be a really good painter. Which still will probably make a good living, but if you want to be one of those great painters, like you want to go for the fetchings, the weapons, you've got to dot your I's and cross your T's. I mean, those guys didn't have nothing at all, anything. And you might have seen them later in their life when they're wielding all this knowledge so intuitively.
How does that get done?
It looks like fiction.
I thought about
When you
going
look
down
at
to
his paintings, you don't know he
reinforcement
draws
breaks.
that well until you see him draw on it. Yeah, his paintings are so loose, but he can do that because he can do the other thing, but a lot of people don't know that. They say, well, I just want some paint by fetches. It's like, oh man, you gotta go back and do what he did. He was trained for 15 years, you know, he didn't train for a couple years, I mean, he was trained most of his life. I mean, and you get Russian lineage in the academy, and then he taught in Russia for years, for decades probably. So by the time he got here, he was a bona fide genius, but he really wasn't. He
Yeah, I've heard
done all
a lot
this-
of those, like,
no one even
like
saw
you
any of
said, it's
that.
always just
So
like.
when he showed up here, he was considered a genius.
Yeah, and I think a lot of.
But now you can find him with there's on the internet, this, that. Back then, there was no way to fetch him look like he was a student. I'm sure it wasn't that good. I mean, when you went to Rocky Period, just like anyone.
Ryan has a Russian book of fashion and has some of the students.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some of it's not that great. I mean,
Nobody's.
no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, but everyone thinks this guy is just like born that way. It's like, wow, man, you gotta train. So yeah, I think that's.
I think I figured it out beforehand.
Jared wants to bring his own palette to see what they got to paint a bunch of.
Okay, will do. Okay. All righty. How's it going, Brian?
It's going well.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
No problem. How's it going down there?
It's going good. You know,
Looking
it's-
good.
Yeah, I'm going to start bringing up the values now and try to, we got about an hour, so it's time to start bringing up the full value range.
Yeah. Got more questions coming in, so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just fire them off and I'll see what I can do to answer them.
Question one. How do you think someone should approach drawing from the imagination?
I used to do a ton of it, and I'm kind of starting to play around with it more again because it really has shaped my who I am as an artist to a great deal. A lot of people don't know that I started a lot in comics and used to do heavy metal covers. So I started with a heavy influence by Frazetta, Bernie Wrightson, Joseph Clement Cole, a lot of really strong both inkers and traditional painters. And I still love and have a huge affinity for that. So when you're studying from invention, you really are drawing upon so much acquired knowledge base. And the way you get your ideas as an inventor is usually not, there's very few guys that just sit down and invent impeccable stuff with no springboard from which to jump off of. For me, personally, I would, a lot of times I would find people that picked poses really well, because in the beginning I had a hard time picking good poses out of my head. So I would find an comic artist that was good but maybe could be improved upon, because my drafting was unique with all the skill sets that I had. So I would find one of those guys and I would borrow one of their poses, and then I would, once I could see the pose, I could then flip an arm or put a different arm on, and once I could kind of get the thing to start taking form, I could then switch over to my anatomical knowledge that I had obtained through hard study, and I could start to pull out a believable looking invention of a different angle of an arm or a leg or a torso. And by the time I got done springboarding off that person's pose, you wouldn't even know where I got the thing from. It'd be impossible to even know. So for me, I spent years doing that because I really just, my forte was not picking good poses. I just wasn't that good at it. Now I can pick really quite good poses, but it took me many, many years to cultivate that ability. You all come. So when you do start working, you're going to have a lot of potholes in your training still, and sometimes they're hard to fill in because you're too busy trying to just get your job halfway done correctly to get paid and to keep your job, that you don't have time to go train anymore. So you're kind of stuck in where you're at. You don't have a lot of time to go back and do heavy lifting in the learning category. So my suggestion for invention is you can invent off of other people. You can start by starting a sketchbook that's donated to or is dedicated to invention work. Whenever you're sitting on an airplane, or I usually pick like a Buscema book. I'll take one of his sketchbooks, or Neil Adams or something, and I'll grab one of his books and I'll take it with me on the plane. And I'll sit there and I'll sketch from it for an hour or two. Maybe I'm on a 5-hour flight. Instead of sitting there and watching some really crappy movie or something, or some kid screaming or whatever, I'll sit and I'll sketch from that, and then I'll put it away. And then for an hour, I'll just try to invent figures that are similar out of my head. There's so many ways you can go about learning and cultivating that invention capability. if you want to go, so like I used to do exercises in class where we would take, say, a Barg plate from the Charles Barg book, which is a sight size book, but there's some beautiful plates in there. And you could get a timer and sit and set it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes and draw one of those drawings and then put it away. And then take a break for a few minutes and then go back and try to draw that same drawing over again and see if anything comes out. And if it doesn't, you didn't memorize anything. So again, that's a great way to test yourself, is whether you're studying Bridgman or you're studying, is always, kind of do a couple hours of study from the person that you're studying from, trying to, again, have a very deliberate intention behind what you're doing. A lot of people sit down to study and they don't study anything. They just sit and draw. That's not studying, that's copying, or it's just moving your wrist. You might get a little bit extra dexterity, but nothing really has been retained, nothing really has been ingrained. So all you did is get a little bit better dexterity. You didn't really get anything that you could use in a clutch situation or when you're manipulating reference or any of that kind of stuff. So the key is you always should be setting a focus and an intention for what it is you're studying and why you're studying it, and then come up with a game plan. And I'm going to help you with that by showing you through different, classes and things how to approach this stuff. And ultimately, hopefully, it'll trigger something in you where you can start coming up with your own ways of studying that are creative and very unique to yourself. But yeah, invention is an art in itself. It's one of the most specialized areas of skill sets. And there are some people that are tailor-made for it, and there are other people that it's just really hard to implement that development of that. But I know I spent years learning to do it, copying Frazettas when I was a little kid, being influenced by, again, Wrightson and all these other comic artists and fantastic fantasy art and artists. And they just really spoke to me. They really moved me. So I would copy their work. I would draw from them. I would try to regurgitate and draw similar things in my own way. But yeah, there's no easy answer to how do you learn how to invent that well. Number one, you have to have a huge amount of acquired knowledge that you can then retain, so that when you are sitting with a blank piece of paper, you can recall aspects of the anatomy that you memorized through academic training. And that has to come the old-fashioned way, which is just long, hard efforts that you are fully engaged in and that you're fully present for, so that you can memorize. When you sit to draw, try to remember that you're not just drawing, you're trying to remember something. A piece of anatomy, manipulating edges, parts of the head, parts of the hand. Usually it's some anatomical stuff when you're studying the figure. Drapery, could be composition, could be any number of things. But the key is you have to start learning how to remember it, because that's what you're trying to do. And the only way you can do it is through repetition. And repetition for a lot of people is boring. So we have to learn how to like repetition. I can't totally help you with that. You're gonna have to, I can try to inspire you through example, try to tell you how long or how I study, but ultimately you have to learn to love repetition. Otherwise, becoming a really good visual artist is almost impossible. I don't know, it's not gonna somehow be injected into your brain, book or through reading, other than lots of doing and proper doing. And that's what we have to do. We have to narrow down. I'm your guide, your tour guide, right? I'm going to take you on this journey, and I'm going to, like I've done with so many people, including myself, and that's my job. My job is to get you safely to a place where you can't hurt yourself by studying incorrectly and building bad habits. And I need to show you how to do that. I need to do it patiently and insightfully and creatively, and I need to do it with passion and conviction and authority. I need to be able to do it right in front of you, so that you know that I know what I'm talking about. If I just sat here and sipped a cup of coffee and talked theory, it's not going to do a lot for you. But the fact that I'm sitting here doing a nice drawing in front of you while I'm talking about the concepts, and also hopefully it resonates with you. If it doesn't, that's okay. You probably already tuned out if that's the case. But if you're still engaged and you're still watching this, then you probably are interested in how to draw. And the fact, again, I don't care who's demoing. It's hard to watch 3 hours of anything. But I try, and that's why I know if I don't talk and I don't say something insightful, the chances of you losing interest and tuning out is really quite high. I don't care how good I am. So to have that magic combination of both execution and verbal ability is really, I think, one of the things that makes a lot of the teachers at our school, including myself, so unique. And the only way you could learn that skill is by teaching, just like by drawing, for 20 years 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 classes a week, every day, in and out, there's no way around it. You're not going to get that skill set any other way. So Eric does it well, Meadow does it well, Lucas does it well, Ben does it well. Everybody at our school does it well. Why? Because they teach 5, 6, 7 classes a week for 15, 16, 17 years, or 5. Now Eric's 18 years in, so he's probably been teaching for about, I don't know, 15 years, 14 years, almost year round. You're just not going to find people doing that. Not many people can talk and paint, or talk and say something insightful and do something good while they're doing it. It's just not easy to find. So that's one thing I'm most proud of. And that's one thing that, again, as you're learning this stuff, you've got to just try to make a connection with it and try to pay your dues and just do the work. Just don't look for the easy way out. Don't look for the quick fix. Oh yeah, there's some magic formula, there's some magic book, there's some magic pencil, there's some magic paintbrush. It does not exist. What does exist is hard work, perseverance, patience, wherewithal, character. Those are the things that are going to get you to the finish line and get you to be one of those artists that you admire. If you like Craig Mullins, or you like Jamie Jones, or you like, I don't care what genre you're in, you like Frazetta, you like Rockwell, you like Soroya, you like Fetchin, you like any of these, they all shared that same common denominator. They worked their butt off. And they were passionate about it, and they loved working at it. And that's what we got to do, is we got to instill that love of the craft in you. And that's what a good school should do. It's not supposed to give you a style. It's not supposed to get you a job. It's as far as going out and getting you that job. It's getting you to understand the value of studying and the love of it, so that when you leave the school, you'll continue to train until you're good enough to get the job that you wanted. And there's plenty of people out there really just waiting and clamoring to hire you, to pay you really good money to make them a lot of money. Whether it's Disney or DreamWorks or some gallery owner or whatever, people are not trying to not hire you, but they're looking for you to bring something to the table that can make them money. As long as you understand that, you'll be fine. It's the business of art. And it's the way it is. So just embrace it and enjoy it, and get good so that you can enjoy that process of interacting and stuff, and not be so white knuckle and panicky and freaked out about it.
When critiquing a drawing, what's the first thing you look for?
I just look for where my eye is perceiving inadequacies in design or spatial. I look, usually because I've drawn for so long, it's quite easy to pick out a head that's too big, it's out of whack or out of joint or dislocated or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times I from it, and as I turn around and look at it, or my first gut instinct when I look at it, too big, too messy, too many curves, too many straights, too bright, too cold, too warm, too this, too that. I mean, it's just a very quick read. And then I start going through the checklist. How is this person's values looking? How are their edges looking? All the biggies. You start with the big ones. How are their insertions? How is their anatomy? Is it believable? How are their edges stacking up? So you just start going through the checklist of things that you would if you're on your own drawing. And it is an art to pinpoint quickly and then fix it quickly. Because usually in a class that we run, I have about 5 to 10 minutes with each student if I want to get around to everybody in the class, and that's always my goal. And give them some personal attention, and to get to work on their drawing and get to explain, find out what's bugging them, and then kind of get in and try to help them improve their eye a little bit that day. And that's the goal. Each day you're just trying to tune their eye a little bit more each time, so that we stack that one on top of another, day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out, until they're really good. So my job is to systematically eliminate the students who have very little. And depending on what time you have to work with someone, it may be, you've got to be realistic with what you're able to accomplish in the amount of time that you're able to work with them.
Who do you think is the greatest living artist? And out of living or dead, who are your greatest inspirations?
You would ask that, wouldn't you? As far as living artists, depending on what you're looking at, if you're looking for technical chops and people that just can compose, a lot of them still are a little bit behind the golden age of illustration guys, like Cornwell and Rockwell and Leyendecker and some of these guys. But there are some people that are really coming up and starting to encroach on that ability level. Again, Morgan Westling's a really great picture maker. He can hold his own in edges and values and shapes, a great draftsman. Z.S. Lang and Mi In Situ, two Chinese painters that are phenomenally good. Jeremy Lipking for his edge work is really quite far up there. I mean, he's quite an impressive edge draftsman and painter. And he can hold his own pretty much across the board. But I mean, he's got a lot of potential. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. There's a lot of them that I look at. I think, it's funny because there's a lot of really great contemporary painters that actually move me in some ways a lot more than some of the older guys. But when you get into the older deceased artists, you're looking at people, again, Nikolai Fashion. I think he's right up there as one of my favorites as far as soulfulness. If you want to look for just bravura, brushwork, and just powerful painting, I'd have to say Sorolla is right up there with the top 5, or top, even maybe higher up than that. Consistency and elegance, you'd have to say Sargent's right up there with that. Strength and power and unique strength in his compositions, Frazetta's right up there. You got Bouguereau for just phenomenal craftsmanship and virtuoso craftsmanship, value control, edge control, shape control, composition. Again, not my most inspirational painter as far as the way he laid paint down, but as far as all those other things I mentioned, probably right up there is one of my favorites. Boy, it's just, that's a good question, but man, it's kind of a loaded one because it's hard to pick just one. Nor do I think you need to. It's just, there have been a lot of great painters. You've got Baldini, you've got Mancini, and some of these more unsung painters that really haven't gotten their fair credit for how good they are yet. Probably will in the future, I would imagine. But I'm always looking out on the outlook for those unique talents, that are either deceased or living, and they come up all the time. I mean, I've seen, I think we're heading towards a really great new period of traditional art that is going to, in the next probably 50 years, hopefully, if all goes well, it'll rival some of the great art that's been done in the past. It's just we're having a hard time kind of rekindling the training that was so common during the times when those were executed. But we are starting schools like ours and other schools that are popping up and are doing a wonderful job, I think, of trying to carry the torch and reinvent a period of art that was almost lost. So it's an honor to be a part of that and to be living in this time when I get to watch not only some of the people I've helped train, but hopefully myself included, propel forward to try to contribute our own little something to the history of art, whether that's helping to bring back the halcyon days of training, or whether it's actually some way in execution. I don't know yet. Only time will tell. But I know we're definitely doing some heavy lifting right now to try to pull it back around. And I think we have to appreciate the people that are doing that. Me included and other people included. But it's an honor for me. It's not like I'm being a martyr or this or that. I just like to be a part of the process, and I'm very thrilled to be living in the time that I get to live in, and be able to participate in that manner. So that being said, that's a long-winded question that really I have a hard time answering. There's so many people I enjoy looking at.
Do you have any tips on the relationship between the figure and the background?
Well, this is kind of an interesting background with all this drapery. I've got this drapery going all over the place, and it's kind of becoming pretty interesting, so I'm a little bit watching it carefully to see if it doesn't detract a little bit or it starts to detract here. I kind of like the abstraction of shape that it's creating. It's very unique, but I have to be careful. Again, I don't want the background to trump, so I got to be careful that it stays as a supporting actor and doesn't find itself screaming for too much attention. So, no, it's hard. Abstractions of background, especially in painting, I learned it in kind of a really weird way. It's probably one of my stronger suits now for my paintings, but I learned it. I took a year and did some abstract painting when I got out of school. I was in my early 20s, and I was just kind of fried on the traditional training thing because I was taking like 15, 16 classes a week in school, and I was just burning like really way too hard for many different reasons that I don't really need to get into, but I was just burning really hard at the time. And I had some friends that went into more abstract painting, and it looked kind of fascinating at the time, very bohemian, looked really like a fun way to do art and fun life to live. It was really romantic kind of, and from the artistic standpoint of what one thinks about when one thinks about an artist's lifestyle. Very free-spirited, bohemian, energetic and fun and exciting and very, just really when I think of an artist. When it's really quite the contrary. Most really good working artists are about as boring as you can imagine. I mean, they're just level-headed, intelligent, hardworking individuals. They might as well be a CEO or something, or they're not as romantic as you would think. But anyway, I kind of put that hat on for a while, and I did a lot of abstract painting, and what I got out of it, that was about a year and a half or so of doing that in my parents' garage when I was in my early 20s, and I learned how to abstract backgrounds. I learned how to break up space creatively. I learned how to create abstractions of color notes and things like that. So I have to say that was very beneficial for me in that regard. But learning to abstract backgrounds and learning how to break up space creatively is an art in and of itself, and it's not one, again, that can be easily taught in any kind of formulaic manner. It's a feeling. If you watch how Richard Schmidt vignettes a painting or breaks up a background, it's an art as much as the art of the painting of the head that he's focusing on. It's amazing. Like to put these little radiating lines back through there. I wasn't even thinking about that when I was doing it. I had no idea what was going to happen. It looks really cool. But again, if I was sitting and premeditating that, I don't even know what I would have been thinking about. I just am feeling my way. And again, I know that's such a hard answer for somebody, is just feel your way through it. Be intuitive. I mean, I know it sounds really lame. But sometimes, overthinking things is not what you want. So when I'm in class trying to show people that, I try to, get on their painting and just blow out the background and throw in some abstract shape. And I'm looking for a juxtaposition of lost and found edges. I'm looking for, bleeding one edge into another. I'm asking myself, are there too many lost edges? Is everything too ethereal? And I'm looking for a balance between lost and found, hard and soft, thick and thin, curved and straight, warm and cool. It's all these juxtapositions of concepts that have to work as a mosaic that tell the story. And that's the art of putting a picture together. And that's hard. The concepts themselves are easy when you peel them apart one at a time. But put them all together and have them try to work, it can be mind-boggling. So again, I don't have an easy answer for that, but I hope that kind of shed a little bit light into my thinking and how I learned how to do it. So let's go take a break. I'll come back, put up to a full value. We only have about another half an hour, 40 minutes. So we'll see how we bring this up to as much of a finish as I can with all the gabbing I'm doing. Cool, get there.
What was the other one you had for me? I forgot.
You got it like that.
It's sticking. It's sticking here.
It's sticking.
You'll never get past Tracy.
Okay, I'll give Tracy. I'm gonna give her an email when I get home.
Hey man, she's not here. She's not here to do it tonight.
She's not gonna go.
She's not here for the vote.
She's not here for the vote.
What are we voting on?
Great. Who's there?
Oh, where'd he go? This-
98, but before it was 105.
Okay. What's the little red thing that popped up?
Yeah, we got a bunch of extra ones.
Yeah, it means this. It's okay.
The
The memory card in this is full.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I'll sell them out, but if I do, I'll let you know what it would be. Yeah, that's a pretty cool. That's a really cool menu. I was really stoked because I was dreading demoing in that thing because you come in, on breaks, you come in so cold. You've got even 2 or 3 weeks off. Like, it isn't enough to freak me out. I know. I think I'm worried.
Freaked out a lot when it comes up.
I know. Thank God. I never take it for granted, though, I swear. I'm never like, oh yeah, it's gonna be. Krista always laughs. She goes, oh come on, And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm not making that up. Some people, I don't know. I don't think I could ever be just. Yeah, I don't know. I have such high expectations of what I'd like to do, and and when you know what you're capable of doing, then it messes with your head because you're always thinking, oh man. Especially when you're going to be taping it and people are watching it from all over. It's like, oh my God, just another layer of pressure that gets put on it, the process. And you just try to. It's like that period when I was gone up there. I like that period a lot more. It's very it's more relaxed. It feels more. I don't know. It has a certain looseness, but yet accuracy to it that right now I'm drawing more uptight than I used to, you know? And it's mostly because I'm just not doing it enough to where it's like that. And in order to get like that, you just have to be in a certain mindset, and you have to be doing that particular language a lot. It's like if you're fluent in a language and stop speaking it for a while, you can still speak it, but you're not gonna sound as articulate and fluent as you were when you were speaking it every day. So it's gonna be like kinda, yeah, you can get by and it's good, and most people aren't gonna scrutinize on it, but the people that really know are gonna say, oh yeah, he's out of practice, man, he doesn't sound as...
So back then you were more active with the silhouette, like you would let it...
I don't know, yeah, in some ways it's more simple, and in some ways, like the way the fingers and hands are done, but it's also a male, which leaves a lot of ability to manipulate tendons and make, like you put that many tendons on a female foot and veins, it's gonna look really bad. So, the fact that I could take his fingers and chunk them up and pull all the knuckles out and show the veins and the feet as well, it's a luxury that you can do with a male figure that you can't really do with a female. So, in some ways I look at that and go, oh yeah, I can't do the same effect on a female that would be able to on that, but I have female drawings that are done similar that I like a lot, that I just, I was in a different mindset at the time when I did them. And I can't remember what it was a long time ago. Some of them are 10 years, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I look at them and I go, God, man, I gotta get some of that back in my... It's like I almost have to go back and do studies of my own drawings to try to get that drawing. It's kind of funny to think that, but it's seriously, I've contemplated doing that. I'm like, I'm gonna take some of my own so I can figure out what the heck was I even doing?
Well, some master study.
Yeah, exactly. What's your master study? Myself?
Trace's favorite joke ever was the living master's getting angry.
Tracy just loves to mess with me. She had a field day. She's funny.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, she's a good girl.
She's very nice. She was driving Jordan and I to Zoom.
She is?
She was. There's no more Zoom.
No, I mean, oh yeah, during the zoo class, yeah. I thought you might have seen her during the break and you guys were going to, no, Jordan's not. Where is Jordan up to? Is he still drawing?
He says he is, but he's not
Not as
getting
much.
anything done. Like, I don't know, he claims he's working as much as me, but I'm doing like 5 things out a week. He shows me like 1 thing every 3 weeks. I mean, I think he's working on stuff, just not getting...
I heard from him, so that's the thing. I mean, he was, when my dad, in his illustration demo a couple weeks ago, I saw him, he was on watching, and he was asking some questions. So it was fun to hear from him.
It would be annoying.
No.
He's listening right now.
That's right.
Yeah. What's that?
He's listening right now.
Is he?
You can ask him.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Jordan? What are you doing? But no, it's funny because there's so many people that, Stefan, that I wish he would reach out and say, hey man, what's going on? What are you doing? Because I just don't know what he's up to, And say, so I'll see some of the people online occasionally doing stuff, but I'm always surprised that they don't, drop an email or pop over an image, something they're working on or something. But it's hard. It's hard when when I first moved from LA down to San Diego, a lot of the guys that I went to school with thought I was done. They were like, oh man, because they knew you're kind of going into a vacuum. You're going away from the environment that you're so used to, the stimulation, and now you're going to be with nobody like that. I luckily had my dad, who was, I was in the garage and he was working upstairs, so
He's talking about
he would come down and look at
vacuums.
my, my work periodically, or
Sense.
I could go show him stuff if I needed to. And that was in a way kind of hard for me too, because I didn't want to have him be my crutch. I didn't want him always bailing me out of stuff. But it was fun to have that sounding board when I needed it. Like, hey, what do you think about this paint? Oh, that's good.
So you don't mind students after sending...
I mean, yeah, I mean, not every day, but I mean, every once in a while, it would be nice to hear from them every couple of weeks or a month, and have them check in and say, hey, man, what's going on? How you doing?
Every 5 hours also.
Yeah, all of a sudden I get one like every day.
Every 5 hours of permission. How are you now? Are you still okay, Jim?
Block you. That's funny.
You haven't even accepted my friend request on Facebook.
Oh, no, I know. I think I did. Did I not yet? I thought I did. I thought I saw it did because I was at my maximum for a long time. And now I think I'm underneath it. Did you remove anybody from the Facebook from here? Because now I have I have 100 people that now I can add, I think, or something.
Well, did you switch it over to?
No, I haven't done anything.
No?
Because a long time it was maxed out. I mean, I was at the limit where I couldn't add anybody.
It's okay, I don't want to be friends with you.
What's that?
That can happen.
It maxed at 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Does it really?
Yeah. And then you have to have a business account
Yeah.
or some other account that will allow you to have more. But yeah, it's lame. I mean,
Do they charge for that?
no, but you don't have certain things get removed. Yeah, you don't have certain. You do that?
Yeah.
They take away certain things. So it's like, and when you do that and you move it over, a lot of times you can lose a lot of the people in the process of doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've read different things on it online, and I thought, maybe
The
it's
algorithm for the business pages, it makes your views a lot less than your personal page. So
Yeah.
for example, if you're putting a painting, it will get, let's say, if it was to get 10 likes on your business page, on your personal page, it would get like 200 likes. And that's what happens for my thing. So way more likes than I get there.
But yeah, no, you know, it's all interesting stuff. I don't think too much about it. I mean, I'd like to be able to friend everybody, you know, because I used to just friend everybody. I didn't even care, whatever. I'm not gonna go research who is this person, because there's just a lot of artists that want to, you know, follow you or want to be friends with you, which is really flattering. But I'm not gonna research every one of them. But then after a while, you get all kinds of crazy stuff coming in here. You know, and you got to go back and weed out people and stuff because like somebody's
There's
posting.
crazy people on the internet?
It's just crazy people. Just occasionally. Not the ones watching tonight. No, they're somebody's cool. Okay, so we're going to do one more session. Can we do 25 and just end 5 early? Is that possible? Is that cool? Okay, cool. So we'll do a 25 and then we'll be done. Thank you so much. You're doing awesome up there. Okay, everybody, this is it. This is the grand finale. I don't know if there's going to be that much happening, but we'll try to bring it up to a full value, especially up in the head, especially, because that's where you want your center of interest to be.
Oh,
Was it? Oh,
sorry.
no, that's good. Oh, shoot. I did 20. And, oh, shoot. Stop. There we go. Okay. All right.
Hey, mechanical pencils, but never sees them used by artists like you. So what do you think about them?
I use them a lot, actually, especially when I do my long graphite drawings, the 15-hour drawings. The longest class we have at the school is 15 hours, and it's 5 weeks on one pose, 3 hours per week. So it adds up to 15 hours. And I use a lot of mechanical pencils when I draw in that class. But again, we haven't, I won't be able to do that in these quick, Friday night live things. So I do plan on, I can't remember what phase it's going to be, but I think it's either phase 4 or 5 of figure drawing in the core program online. I will be doing a long, 9-hour graphite finish drawing with, click pencils and, lead pencils and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, you'll see me use it in those drawings, but not when I do a charcoal drawing, obviously. You can't mix charcoal and graphite very well. So when I do these kind of, our staple style of training at the school is with these pencils, because we're trying to learn how to paint cheaply. And when you use micron pencils, or the click pencils and the different lead pencils and stuff, you're really getting more into linear design and cross contouring, which is a wonderful way to learn how to design form that you can later transfer over into your painting. But it's an art in and of itself. It's very specialized. So that's why you don't see me, demoing it that much on these online, these little quick tutorials, because it really is of tighter, more rendered drawing to me. That's what I use them for.
There's some reflected light under the model's right arm. How do you show form if there is no reflected light? Do you put darker tones or just keep it flat, or what?
Well, reflected light, is often abused by many, many artists, and I like to accentuate my core shadows, which means that's what gives the illusion. See, like right here, I'm accentuating my core, meaning making it more powerful, which allows the shadow which was there to look like reflected light. I prefer to design my reflected light by manipulating my cores rather than by picking out my reflected light using an eraser. I think it's too dangerous and too dicey. So for me, I like to, again, I like strong core shadows. I always have. I like full value drawings. Always have. And paintings. That's just me. Some people like to work high key. Some people like to work in a low key. It's kind of like some people have different ranges in their voice. Some people are really enamored with certain aspects of that range. I like to be able to do both, but I do work better in a full value range. So right now what I'm doing is going back and taking all my shadows and cores and trying to bring them out a stronger, darker finish to support the full value range that I'd like to get in this drawing as close as possible, or as much as possible before the end of the drawing. And I've got only 25 minutes or so to do that. So now this is the last layer that I'm basically going one more time over the whole drawing. And there are some shadows like in the fingers and stuff here that got neglected that need to be brought up fairly quickly. So this is where you go through that last pass, trying to bring the drawing up before the end of the class to the full value finish, if possible. And there's going to be some areas that get neglected and some areas that just don't get enough TLC because you just run out of time. That's never a problem for me. As long as I'm on the path to a good drawing and running out of time is the only problem that I had, then it really wasn't a problem at all. It's just I ran out of time. Given enough time, I would have continued in that trajectory and I would have created a really beautiful drawing. So I'm never that hard on myself about not finishing a drawing in the allocated or the amount of time, as long as the procedure that I'm using is correct and on target.
Jeff Paxson, who asked about who the greatest living painter was, he wants to know what your opinion is on Jackson Pollock and artists like that.
It's out of my wheelhouse. I would like to be able to answer with a really intelligent, witty of some sort, but I'm one of those guys where I have very particular interests, and when I have those particular interests, those are the people that I am looking at as far as my influences. I have nothing personal against Pollock. I mean, fascinating to a certain degree, very tormented artist. To me, it's just sling and paint, so it doesn't show me a lot in the craftsmanship area, and it's kind of interesting from maybe just an experimental standpoint, but I'm never that enamored with experimental art. It just doesn't, I paint very abstractly, so it's hard for me to say anything about abstract art because I do wield my paint in a very abstract manner sometimes for backgrounds and abstract areas of my painting and things like that. So I utilize abstraction in thought process and abstraction in painting quite a bit. But I don't use it to the extent that it carries the weight of the painting. So for me, the paintings that carry concept through abstraction to the degree where it doesn't resonate with me, have a tendency to fall short for me, so I don't really, it doesn't resonate with me, that's all I can say. I don't know, and so I don't normally do a lot of research on those artists. I don't spend a lot of time looking at their work. I don't care that, it's great that they did it, and maybe they're famous and they sell paintings for $52 million or something. That's great, but that has no bearing on me or interest for me. I'm not in that category. I probably never will be, nor do I have interest in pursuing that area. So for me, it just falls on deaf ears. It's just kind of an area of art. I wish I was more, again, I could stop everything and go and start researching, being more well-rounded in the aspect of art history and stuff, but it's just, I know what artists that that I'm pursuing as far as influencing me, and those are the artists I take the time to go see in museums and look at, and really hyper obsess and study and things like that. That's just me. If someone said, well, you're pretty narrow-minded and you don't this and that, well, that's their opinion. That's cool, whatever. But for me, I'm a craftsman. I like craftsmanship, so that's what I look at, and I don't see a lot of that in Jackson Pollock's work, personally. So I don't look at it much.
Cool. What concepts do you feel are the most difficult for artists to comprehend?
Composition and design is picture making, where you take all the components of all these pieces that we're learning, anatomy and edges and values, and you put it together into an ability to narrate stories or tell stories through your imagery. I think putting all the pieces together is the hardest thing that I see people struggling with, including myself, is just, pieces, but now you've got to take the whole pieces and you've got to put them together into an organic, living, a full piece that's going to hold up in all areas. And that's like being an orchestra, a one-man orchestra, where you're the conductor and playing every part in the proper context with the proper intensity, all at a level, all at the same time. That's what I think of it as. That's kind of what it feels like. And so just imagine how hard that would be. Usually you've got a celloist and you've got a violist and you've got all these people playing their specific thing, not trying to do everything all at the same time and in the proper ratio. That's, to me, what visual picture making kind of comes down to. And it's hard as can be. But very enriching, very challenging, very fun to try to do. But you got to respect each area, and each area should be studied individually and then put back together. And that's why we do it the way we do it, or why we try to piece it apart like that.
Bob Green's been sharpening his pencils the way we do at the school, but when he sharpens softer 6B pencils, they're broken. inside the pencil? Is that pretty common?
Well, I don't even know what 6B charcoal pencil you're getting. It must be a
It's a
graphic.
generals.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I mean, usually I will never venture into that kind of range of softness, and yeah, they're going to be very brittle, and they're not going to. Not every pencil will sharpen to a long taper. So if you're trying to do it and it's not working, it's a pencil that's not going to work for this technique. It's as simple as that, and that's why you don't see me using generals in the 6B range, because I would end up with the same problem you're having, and then I would just say, well, I'm not going to use that pencil because it doesn't work for what I need it for, so I would just not buy it anymore, not use it for that. So we've weeded out most of the pencils that'll work for this technique. You can try to find that we don't know about, but I doubt you're going to find it. And if you do, let me know. I'd like to know. But most of them I've tried, and I start, you know, when I find some pencils that work for me for this technique, I don't keep going and researching, you know. I'll occasionally buy a pencil I've never seen before and try it out and see what happens. But if the 1710Bs are giving me what I want, or the Contes or whatever, why keep looking? I don't know. I mean, I've got other things I need to learn, other things I need to work on. So a lot of times I just find the pencils that work. We've kind of already found a number of them that do. And occasionally, like I said, I'll go off on a wild goose chase trying to find some new pencil for some, you know, whatever, just kind of interested. But most of the time I'm too busy working on some other piece of information or learning something else. But anyway, yeah, I just would stay away from those really, really ultra high. You know, you shouldn't need a 6B. You should be able to get everything that you want out of a B, just by pressure sensitivity of your hand being well trained. There's no need for that soft of a pencil, in my opinion.
Your shading looks free spirit, but not messy. How do you avoid messy shading?
Well, scratchy shading, sketchy, scratchy shading, where you're kind of, again, using too much maybe cross-contouring or linear, it is not bad in and of itself. I mean, I have a huge affinity for linear draftsmen, and I think it's some of the most beautiful drafts I've ever seen is in the linear range. But oftentimes abused by people that aren't as virtuoso with their knowledge base. So how can someone like Joseph Clement Cole or Gibson or some of these guys wield their chaotic edge work and still make it read visually? Is somewhat of an anomaly, it's somewhat cryptic, but they're able to do it. And I study them sometimes for that, to try to understand how they're capable of doing that. Because, you know, for all practical purposes, Joseph Clement Cole's work should not work. It's way too sloppy. But it still does, and it fascinates me because it kind of flies in the face of what I've been taught and what I've studied. And those are the people that really fascinate me now, because I want to know why they're able to do it. You know, how are they able to pull that off? So yeah, I just trying to get both chaos and control, good edges with a little bit of controlled sloppiness in there. So I'm trying to get, you know, again, not blend too much with my finger so that it looks too smooth, but also not have it be too scratchy so that it looks too chaotic. So it's just blending, just like trying to find that combination of straights and curves that's just right. I'm also trying to find areas of rest versus areas of interest versus areas of chaos versus areas of simplistic explanation. You're always balancing dichotomies. You're working off of concepts that are contradictory to each other. And that's the balance of art, is always trying to balance all those key components and keep the thing still working at the end of the day. That is challenges that you'll all have to face, for sure.
How are you at drawing figures from imagination and memory after doing so much model work? And does that improve your understanding of anatomy?
Oh yeah, yeah. Figure invention has and will always be a huge component of my training. As of late, I've been a little bit lax on it because I just haven't had the time to, it's a bad excuse, but I really just haven't had the time to go and exercise it, but I miss it greatly. And I'm getting ready to ramp back up in it because I'm going to be doing some pretty heavy invention commission for some people. And I need to get back and put that hat back on and start playing around with it again. And I'm actually looking forward to it greatly. So, you know, it all helps. I mean, invention helps your realistic work. Your realistic work helps you to be able to invent better because you have retained knowledge that you can draw upon. So it all builds off of each other. And to tell you what exact degree each thing plays in my success versus your success versus someone else's success would be absolutely a moot point. There's no point in even trying to figure that out because it's too cryptic to even know. But I do know that the more you train abstractly and outside the box, And the more variety, with the exception of having so much variety that you lose yourself in it. So there's a delicate balance between studying too many things, too diverse of things, all at the same time that would just confuse you, versus directing your energies with intelligence, is more what you want. And so when you say direct your energies with intelligence, it means good multitasking, the ability to cut through all the clutter and the clamor that's happening in your daily life, to cut to the chase and know what percentage of each thing that you should do. That is as much of a fine art as doing any of this. The fine art of training is really the true fine art, because that's the art that gets you from point A to point B. But it requires diligence, focus, it requires wherewithal, it requires multitasking ability, it requires patience, perseverance. Everything that you would want as a human being is required to do art at a high level. Unfortunately, it never gets its due respect by people that see it as a God-given gift or some kind of magical thing that people do. But the people that do it well deserve an amount of respect for how amazing their thought process is. And I know, because I've dealt with people in my classes that are of the highest level in their careers. Neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, lots of doctors, lots of lawyers, lots of CEOs, lots of electrical engineers, computer engineers. And man, this stuff will bring you to your knees. I mean, it really will. It is so hard. And again, I don't say that to deter you guys, but to respect what you're trying to do so that you don't be too hard on yourselves. Too many people expect just to throw out their hat and become a great painter. And it's just not going to happen. You can try it, and when it doesn't happen, then you'll know. But it requires incredible diligence and incredible focus, incredible wherewithal, and it's just an amazing process. So if you can learn to respect it more at that level, the reason I say that is so that you don't needlessly beat yourself up for not being phenomenal at it when you really don't deserve to be if you haven't done the proper training. If you do the proper training, you will be phenomenal, and I'll be preaching to the choir. You won't have a problem with it. You'll say, yeah, that's true. I've witnessed that. Yeah, that's the way it goes. But I'm saying no magic anything. Just the old-fashioned hard work, sweat, tears, all the good stuff. You're going to love it. You're going to grow to love it, and it's going to enrich your life on so many levels. And ultimately, you're going to be a better person for it. You're going to be a stronger, better thinker, more tenacious, better at negotiating, better at interacting with your spouse, better at everything. Your personal relationships, everything's going to improve. And so from that standpoint, art is all-encompassing. It reflects your life in general. It's like a mirror. If you're frazzled and uptight, your work's going to look uptight. If you're living life really and openly, and you're very accepting, and you're very in a good place, your work's going to reflect that. I've gone through periods where my work suffered greatly, and if I looked at it, it was just a mirror of what was going on in my life. It was no wonder it was looking the way it was, because it couldn't have done anything but that, under the circumstances. So go ahead. Next question.
What are some of your favorite linear draftsmen? I think you mentioned a couple, and somebody wanted to write them down.
Oh man, Joseph Clement Cole, Heinrich Klee, Bernie Wrightson, mostly inkers. Franklin Booth. It's Charles Dana Gibson. Trying to think of draftsmen that are linear that come to mind. Egon Schiele. I'm trying to think of a bunch of them.
Comic books, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, comic guys.
You guys?
Oh, geez. Again, Buscema, those guys are awesome. I mean, they're all linear guys, more or less. I mean, they do some tone work, but God, you would put me on the spot with that. Well, that should be enough to get you kind of started for sure. But linear guys, I mean, again, just people that draw with line that looks like tonal is what we're looking for. So those are they're all over the place, but you'll find a lot of them in comics, that's for sure. Mostly.
There's some good things to focus on when learning values and how to draw.
Well, again, depicting the proper relationship of the values, you'll know, because, it's like that old game you which one of these doesn't belong, and they give you either and they throw in one that doesn't look the right, and you're supposed to pick it and be able to see it, In values, it should be the same thing. When you look at the drawing, something in the drawing is just going to jump out and look disconcerting, not look right. That probably means it's out of harmony. If it's out of harmony, it probably means it's not proper. It's either too dark or it's too light. It's not representing the form properly. You've got a halftone that's supposed to be relegated to the light that now is done too dark that looks like it belongs to the shadow. Therefore, it breaks the form down and it confuses the viewer. The viewer's looking at it saying, that doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be there. It looks like a bruise. It looks like dirt or something. Because the value is discordant. It doesn't belong. So the key is to learn to see value as it belongs in its proper place. It's either going to be on the dark side or the light side. And you should not mix those two up. And if you start mixing them up in your drawing, the drawing will become fragmented and it'll start to look like visual stuttering. It's similar to someone that stutters when they talk, but it's visual. So you got to be careful with that. Again, is there any hard and fast rule for that? No. Lots of drawing from depicting what you see accurately in longer efforts will help you to control your values. Quick sketch is not a value control exercise. There's no time to accurately depict your values. It's a mapping exercise and a placement exercise, a design exercise, a quick thinking and analyzation exercise, but not a value exercise. These longer efforts allow you to bring the drawing up and to really play around with the values and try to get them correct. And that's why we do these longer efforts, because that's where we really learn to control our values more at a more higher level.
It's the best way to draw hair, should be implied.
I love these questions. They're awesome. They're really good. I mean, I'm not being facetious or anything like that. It's just hair is an art like anything. There are little tricks and tidbits that you can learn. It's either going to be curly, straight, or round, but basically curly hair is just cylinders, and the light as it passes around the cylinder is going to hit at a right angle at some point, and that's going to catch a highlight, and then it's going to go into dark, and then it's going to roll over another curl, and that's going to do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So it's nothing more than a lot of cylinders grouped together. And then you want to make those cylinders somewhat erratic so they don't look so generic as if I just drew a bunch of cylinders there. So it's the illusion of hair. You don't want to draw hair by taking inventory. I look up there, I see your hair type, and I draw a version of it. I don't copy what I see up there. I don't have time really for that, and even if I did have time, I don't know if that would yield any better result. So I don't want to make my job any harder than it already is. So again, straight hair, curly hair, wavy hair. It's going to be one of those. So everything's a combination of those. So you can draw, pick up Vogue magazine or something, or when you go to get your haircut, grab some of those haircut magazines that they have in there and ask them if you can steal a few of them or have a few of the old ones or something. And go through and just draw head ovals, split them into thirds like you were drawing a head lay-in, and then maybe just get the head laid in a little bit and then focus on just doing hair studies. I do about the size of the head that I have on this drawing tonight, and just do whole pages of different hair studies and do 50 or 100 of them over the course of a couple months. You learn how to draw hair really well,
Actually out of questions.
Woo! Well, almost out of time. Anyway.
Yeah, we are.
We've got literally a couple minutes left, so I'm probably just going to stop answering questions and try to finish this off. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, we've got some exciting things coming with the online school. We have a new guild system coming, which allows you to kind of work through structure. It's going to give you some really fun impetus to try to work through these different layers. And it's going to have a lot of perks as well. So if you accomplish these different layers of guilds, you can actually, at some point, get the program for free. So we're going to explain more of that in the months to come. We'll probably be launching in about a month. So look forward to that. And if you're not online, hopefully we'll see you on there. There's not a lot of risk. Try it for a month. If you don't like it, cancel. I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. If you like lives, it's 50 times better, right? Because you've got 3 cameras, you've got high def, over my head, perfect angle, and you've got just a ton of really information. So again, I know, these are not all about sales pitching, but it's a great program, and it's going to help you a lot. So I hope we see you on there. If not, just keep tuning in, and I'm happy that we can do these for you. And we're probably going to switch over to doing them once a month. And I'm going to switch them off with some podcasts that I'm going to start doing about different topics that I want to cover. More concepts, philosophical aspects of art, my favorite books, favorite artists, talking about them, digesting them, breaking them down. So look forward to that in the future as well. But again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be doing one in about 3 weeks from now. So I hope you're enjoying, and keep sending us some input, letting us know what you think about them, and thanks again. see, we have a few minutes, right? Are we still?
Yeah, we still got.
I'm going to show you guys a
Yeah.
few paintings from the last boot camp we just did. We just did a boot camp, so I might as well for the night for that. Some things you guys could be doing in paint. Again, there's a lot of things you could be doing, but master studies. So here's a little fetching study that was done during the boot camp. The boot camp we do once a year, and it's a 8-day thing. And so that's a little fetching study, and it was about a 3-hour study, and it's just basically going over taking an artist, just like we do with master studies in charcoal, but trying to digest their painting style and get the feeling and flavor of that artist. You're going to also want to be doing lots of landscape stuff. So it's not all just about figures, it's about studying things like this, where you're actually learning to depict cloudscapes, mood, atmospheric perspective, because you can't always just paint a figure with nothing around it. So we got to know landscape. And then just straight portrait studies from the live model, which I'll be doing some of these in the future as well. But this one has a really nice feel, and it's about a 3-hour demo, and it goes through with these tiles. We were talking about tiling earlier. This is me taking that knowledge that I learned in gouache and applying it to oil, but leaving the tiles in so I don't go and blend them all out so it's all smooth. I want to leave some of the character in the paint. And in order to do that, we have to leave those tiles. And the tiles are small juxtapositions of not only shape, but temperature. So we're learning to turn form with temperature, not just value, and not just blending. So it's a really great way to paint, and it gives you very lively painting. So we'll get into more of that too in future Friday Night Lives, as well as on the online program. So again, tune in. Thanks again. I'll look forward to seeing you down the road. Cool. Very cool. Good to see you back in the paint, my friend.